A man staggers down the garbage-laden street. Men and women clothed in rags lie on the sidewalk as he pushes forward through a sea of semi-conscious drug addicts standing stooped, arms down by their sides like zombies. The man stops and talks to a friend. His legs are covered in infected pustules. To his side, a woman lies unconscious, looking all but dead, blood running down her bandaged left leg where a flesh-eating condition has caused a gaping hole. This is addiction at its very worst, and it is the epitome of 21st century drug-related civil disorder. The scene is just a regular day in the American heart of urban squalor, a sight unimaginable when the US kicked off its war on drugs decades ago. Today, we'll cover all of the most addictive drugs, including the terrifying ones that have led to the description you just heard. We'll try to get our heads around what has happened with drugs in the USA, the most addicted country on the planet, which, as you'll see, is home to some disturbing statistics, along with those ultra-dystopian city streets. Coming in at number 5 is alcohol, also known as booze, brew, juice, hooch, sauce, firewater, and liquid courage, which can get you drunk, wasted, wrecked, smashed, trashed, hammered, plastered, battered, blasted, sloshed, trolleyed, and our favorite of the British expressions, absolutely wankered. Booze is, of course, legal, but it's still a drug, and an extremely addictive one at that. Alcohol addicts are everywhere you look. According to studies, 50 to 60% of Americans aged 21 to 64 are regular consumers. 31.5% of American people aged 18 to 21 are drinkers, as are 14.5% of people aged 16 and 17, 4.7% of 14 and 15-year-olds, and shockingly, even 1.6% of 12 and 13-year-olds. 29.5 million, or 10.5% of all Americans aged 12 and older, qualify for what's called alcohol use disorder. 17.3 million of them males and 12.3 million female. That is a lot of addiction. The National Institute on Alcohol and Alcoholism wrote that each year there are around 178,000 booze-related deaths in the U.S., about 120,000 male deaths, and 59,000 female deaths. Around the world, over 3 million people a year die because of alcohol abuse, or about 5.3% of all global deaths. In people aged 20 to 39 years, close to 13.5% of total deaths in the world are attributable to alcohol. Alcohol is deadly, but in small amounts it gives you a nice dopamine hit, causing relaxation and reducing social inhibition. Hence the term Dutch courage, relating to Dutch soldiers drinking before going into battle. The calming effect is down to something called gamma-aminobutyric acid, or GABA, an inhibitory neurotransmitter that blocks specific signals to your central nervous system. In layman's terms, it helps you chill out, lessening anxiety, stress, and fear. It's always good to be calmed down, but booze does a lot more than that in the brain, and the results aren't always positive. It literally makes you stupid, and stupid people do stupid things, as can be seen in just about any city in the world on a Saturday night. Alcohol affects a part of the brain called the cerebellum, which is vital for motor skills, hence why drinking makes walking or driving difficult, especially if you've had a lot. That rush of dopamine also affects the brain's prefrontal cortex, our so-called executive suite associated with self-control, decision-making, and restraint. Have you ever woken up after a crazy night out and discovered you spent all your rent money? That's a result of your prefrontal cortex not working as it should. But it also leads to a 40% to 360% increase in dopamine activity, which also means that people use it to self-medicate, making it especially addictive to people with issues like PTSD, anxiety, or depression. In fact, 22% of people who drink in the world will develop a dependence, and for many of them, it's a way to deal with the psychological issues. Even so, the vast majority of people in the world can't control their drinking. It's an ongoing debate if there's a safe limit as to how much you can drink. But people for the most part will drink with friends, have a glass of wine at home, watch sports with a couple of beers, drink some champagne at weddings, and it won't kill them or lead to an arrest. But for those who do become addicted and try to quit, they quickly find the most insidious aspect of alcohol addiction: the withdrawal symptoms. And these can be severe, arguably the very worst of all drug withdrawal symptoms. Putting all that alcohol inside you has affected how your central nervous system works, and because it has a depressant effect on your body, the body tries hard to keep you awake or alert while on booze. When you suddenly quit drinking, the body is still in this ramped up mode, so you can feel very wired, and you start to shake and feel severe anxiety. And these are the mild symptoms. Those in the grips of severe symptoms can start to hallucinate, possibly talking to people who aren't even there, or brushing spiders off their body. This might happen within the first 2 days of stopping, and the nightmare can get much worse. About 5% of people will have what are called delirium tremens, or DTs, after the initial anxiety. The person will become extremely agitated. In a medical setting, they may have to be strapped down so as to not hurt themselves or someone else. Their hallucinations can be so vivid that they barely see the people around them. Instead, they might be looking at snakes or some other frightening apparition. In the early 20th century, the condition would sometimes be called seeing pink elephants. This can be very frightening, not to mention dangerous. According to a 2022 research paper, the mortality rate for DTs is between 5 and 15% when the person gets treatment, but around 37% when they don't. Coming off alcohol dependency is serious business. Ironically, one of the drugs that doctors will give to people to counteract the dangerous symptoms of alcohol withdrawal is a drug that can cause similar withdrawal symptoms after long-term use, resulting in what sufferers have called a living nightmare. Welcome to benzo hell. Unlike alcohol, benzodiazepines, or benzos, are prescribed by doctors, although they're also sold on the streets. But as you'll soon see, the street versions, which are oftentimes counterfeit, can be dangerously contaminated. For decades, society and much of the medical world seem to ignore or underestimate just how dangerous and terrifying benzos could be when they're stopped abruptly. And taking one of those so-called chill pills with brand names such as Xanax, Klonopin, Valium, or Ativan is often talked about in a lighthearted way in the movies or on TV. But chill pills, in fact, are not to be messed with. Like alcohol, they work on the GABA system, so indeed they chill you out. But also, like alcohol, your body gets used to being in chill mode. So when you stop and you have a dependence, your body keeps trying to make you switched on. You become tremendously wired, maybe not sleeping for days on end, unable to do anything except be wired and panic. You get rebound anxiety for the anxiety you'd been trying to prevent. You can become so worked up that it leads to seizures that can kill you. We visited a benzo withdrawal forum online, and there are many reports of people having seizures, and lots of people lose their minds to the point of a complete nervous breakdown. Many lose their partners, their jobs, their savings, everything. Benzos used to be handed out like candy by doctors who underestimated just how serious withdrawal could be. What's now referred to as benzodiazepine withdrawal syndrome. Thankfully, today doctors will not usually prescribe benzos for weeks unless it's absolutely necessary. It's hard to say how long it takes to form a dependency, though. Everyone is different. It could be months, or it could be just weeks of daily use. The pills themselves can be lifesavers for panickers or insomniacs. They're incredibly effective at calming a person down, but this leads to people taking them when not absolutely necessary. They might then become tolerant, so they increase the dose, or their doctor does. We visited a lot of forums to research this video, and reading what people say about benzo withdrawal is enough to turn anyone off from ever taking them. People talked about chemical brain damage that even years after stopping, they said, still made their lives difficult. Others discussed their paralyzing anxiety during withdrawal, or feeling like bugs crawling on their skin, the night terrors, their tremors, their inability to barely speak, having body spasms, hallucinations, psychosis, mania, paranoia, derealization, depression, intractable insomnia, and for one person what he described as an incredible Hulk rage. Another person, a self-confessed lifelong recreational drug taker, called benzos the most dangerous drug I've ever taken. According to the U.S. National Institutes of Health, 30.6 million American adults, or 12.6% of the population, use benzodiazepines. 25.3 million, or 10.4%, take them as prescribed by their physician, and 5.3 million, or 2.2%, misuse them. And the highest incident of misuse falls into the 18 to 25 years of age category. In Scotland, according to the BBC, there was so much misuse that it was dubbed a Valium crisis. In 2019, the BBC published a story with the headline, "Street Valium Blamed for Unprecedented Spike in Drug Deaths." The so-called street blues were selling for pennies, since traffickers were producing so many. Some of them were coming from China, something we'll get to later. In 2023, an Australian newspaper wrote the headline, "Common Anti-Anxiety Meds Turning Australians into Accidental Addicts." Usage in Australia over the last 20 years has shot up, with 1.4 million Australians being prescribed 5.1 million scripts of these chill pills from 2020 to 2021. The same article said that since these are prescribed by the doctor, people don't see themselves as becoming drug addicts, and that The proportion of accidental overdose deaths due to benzodiazepines has doubled in the past 20 years, up 32.5% in 2021. As with another kind of drug we'll talk about, some of the blame for the benzo crisis lies with doctors and pharmaceutical companies who might endorse the use of benzos when it's not always medically necessary. The benzodiazepine market was worth $2.35 billion in 2022 and is expected to reach $3.1 billion by 2032. These pills can be a lifesaver, but they can also be a life ruiner. And behind both are people profiting who don't care either way. This puts benzos high on the most addictive drugs in the world. And the next drug, while not as dangerous in terms of withdrawal symptoms, is even harder to kick. Like alcohol, nicotine is legal, and smokers consume about 5 trillion cigarettes a year, costing about $2 trillion in economic damage, but making a whole lot of people very, very wealthy. In 2024, the global tobacco market generated a revenue of almost $1 trillion and is expected to increase by another $130.2 billion by 2029. That's why you won't be seeing an end to the tobacco business anytime soon. According to the WHO, there are around 1.3 billion smokers in the world, with around 1.1 billion using cigarettes as their fix, and the rest using various other kinds of tobacco products. The legal age for which you can buy cigarettes or other tobacco products differs depending on the country. In the US, you have to be 21 after being raised from 18 in 2019. In the UK, it was 16 for many years, but that changed in 2007 when it went up to 18. Most of the world, 18 is the magic number, although there are about 50 million smokers on the planet who are 13 to 15. The CDC in the US said in 2023, nearly 2 of every 100 high school students, 1.9%, reported that they had smoked cigarettes in the past 30 days. 1 out of 100 middle school students had given it a go at least once in the past month, too. The CDC added 15 of every 100 middle school students, 14.7%, and nearly 28 of every 100 high school students, 27.9%, said they had ever tried a tobacco product in their lifetime. The same report said 9 out of 10 US adults had tried smoking at least once in their life. Considering the dangers, this isn't good news. Still, things now are a lot different from how they were in the past. Some of you out there will remember a time when smoking was pervasive. You went to a restaurant, a bar, or a pub, and the place was full of people smoking cigarettes. People smoked at the office. On planes, you went to the smoking part that was divided from the non-smoking part by a curtain. Former cabin staff have said the smoke was sometimes so thick that they couldn't see enough to carry out the in-flight service. And it was even worse in the decades before that. In the 1930s, American Tobacco, the maker of Lucky Strikes, used doctors in their ad campaigns to sell their cigarettes. 20,679 physicians say Luckies are less irritating to the throat, said a doctor in one ad. And believe it or not, that was an improvement over times in the past. In 1890, an ad for Dr. Batty's asthma cigarettes said their brand helped sufferers of asthma, hay fever, head colds, diseases of the throat, and bronchial issues. That's like saying lard aids weight loss. The company did at least state that kids under 6 shouldn't smoke. After all, they might stick a lit one in their eye. In the 1930s, 50 to 60% of American men and 5 to 10% of women smoked. The number of male smokers was around the same in the 1940s, although around 20% of women smoked. Smoking had been viewed as somewhat unladylike at the start of the 20th century, but thanks in part to Edward Bernays, now known as the father of public relations, and his marketing campaign to show strong women smoking, so-called torches of freedom, the number of female smokers increased. Smoking had attached itself to the growing feminist movement. It was a similar story for men, who were subliminally informed that smoking was a tough guy thing. Eric Lawson, one of the Marlboro men, died at the age of 72 from respiratory failure due to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. In 1965, about 52% of American men smoked and 34% of American women were smokers. But at the end of the 60s, the Mad Men-style marketing campaigns were less effective with all the studies on smoking and cancer. And the decade ended with about 44% of men and 31% of women being smokers. Still, despite all the warnings, by 1987, around 29% of US adults smoked, 32% being men, 27% women. So close to equality. The numbers gradually decreased with bans on smoking and anti-smoking campaigns until we arrived at the adult smoking rate in the US of 14% of men and 11% of women at the start of the 2020s. People know it's bad, but it's still highly addictive, so they keep on doing it. It's estimated that every year around 8 million people die prematurely due to smoking. Researchers say it'll likely kill 1 billion people over the course of the 21st century. While smokers don't seem to be getting high, that doesn't mean it's not addictive. It actually increases dopamine levels in your brain's reward system by about 25 to 40%. If you've ever been to an airport and seen a smoking room, the toxic, coughing human zoos that can be depressing enough to make smokers think twice about their so-called dirty habit, you'll see that people can't seem to go very long without a smoke. Prolonged nicotine use causes cravings. While you might not think you get high from lighting up, you do, which is why it's so hard to quit. According to the CDC, in 2015, a massive 68% of American smokers said they wanted to quit. In 2018, 55% said they tried, but only 7.5% said they were successful. Smoking is notoriously easy to start, but very hard to stop. So, is it addictive? Of course it is. People know there's a high chance of it ending their life early, not to mention causing a grocery list of possible health problems, including cancer, heart disease, lung disease, to name just a few. Yet they still do it. Okay, now it's time to talk about the hard hitters, the drugs that can take over your life, chew you up, spit you out, and throw you into a street somewhere in the USA's heart of urban darkness. In the number 2 spot are the stimulants. We're going to focus more on cocaine than on amphetamines and methamphetamines, though neurologically speaking, they both have similar actions, which is to create a dopamine and noradrenaline tsunami in your brain. They both speed up messages in your brain, affecting the sympathetic and central nervous systems, causing arousal, alertness, and giving you energy. It could also result in you talking for 3 nonstop hours about how much you loved your pet hamster when you were in middle school. It's thought there are around 22 million cocaine users around the world right now, with as many as 1.5 million regular users in the US, and experts say we're doing more coke than ever. In the UK, where groups of men and women are often seen bunched in toilet stalls together on a night out, there is coke in the sewage water. Scientists said in 2015 that London sewage had the highest cocaine concentrations in the whole of Europe. We kid you not, a marine biologist in Britain in 2024 said there is so much contamination in the sea around Britain that the crabs are on cocaine and the shrimp are on speed, which could affect their behavior and upset the natural ecological system. Traces of coke were even found in the Houses of Parliament bathrooms, just as various politicians were talking about getting tough on drugs. Coke is truly everywhere. The Global Report on Cocaine 2023 said coca cultivation rose 35% from 2020 to 2021. Seizures of cocaine hit record levels at about 2,300 tons, and it's believed only 20 to 25% of the coke that is shipped gets seized at some point. Most of it hits the streets where it can be cut with something, and so grown in size but become weaker, sometimes to the point of it containing hardly any cocaine at all. Some British coke that was tested in a lab not too long ago had only a 10% purity, but Channel 5 News in 2019 reported that the purity of cocaine in Britain has risen from an average of 20% to 80% in just 10 years. Unlike methamphetamine, the drug that powered so many soldiers during World War II, cocaine has not been demonized as much, making it seem more acceptable in society. Meth is often viewed as kinda trashy, while coke has throughout the decades been linked to Wall Street traders, Hollywood movie stars, high-powered sales executives, and people who can't wait to tell you about their screenplay. In short, snorting rails is not too taboo, which doesn't help where growing consumption rates are concerned. Data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development said about 2.4% of Americans had done coke from 2022 to 2023. What may come as a surprise to many of you is the same report said 2.5% of Spaniards had done cocaine that year, as had 2.5% of Austrians, 2.7% of British people, and at the top was Australia at 4.2% of the population. The US used to be the king of coke, but things are changing. As you'll soon see, there's a perfectly rational explanation for this. It's believed that about 1/5 of cocaine users will develop a dependency at some point, which can get very, very expensive. In terms of it killing you outright in one sitting, chances are very low, although a 2018 study of people having heart attacks under 50 showed that 6% had coke in their system. Correlation is not causation, but it can still count for something. A paper published by the National Institutes of Health explained, cocaine users are at a 7-fold risk for myocardial infarction compared to non-users. The study found 6% of emergency room patients treated for chest pain had a cocaine-induced myocardial infarction. Unlike powdered coke, its freebase form crack seems to have become a bit more taboo, even though essentially users just want the same thing, rushes of dopamine and adrenaline. Both forms can be incredibly hard to quit. Overdoses might be uncommon, but with crack and regular cocaine, the euphoria a person experiences can start to produce profound cravings. If a user quits, he or she likely won't suffer psychosis or seizures, as someone with alcohol or a benzo addiction might, but they will feel very uncomfortable and the cravings will be intense. People sometimes do so much they suffer from septum perforation. Their nose collapses. It's also highly psychologically addictive. Just ask rapper Flavor Flav, who said he used to spend $2,600 a day on crack and did so for 6 straight years. That comes to $5,694,000. And kicking that habit is hard. A paper in the U.S. National Library of Medicine written on the topic of cocaine withdrawal listed the symptoms as depressed mood, psychomotor agitation, psychomotor retardation, craving for cocaine, insomnia, and vivid unpleasant dreams. And yet, cocaine use is increasing all over the world. As demand remains high, farmers and traffickers from South America will keep making and selling it. That means more cocaine-related violent deaths. A recent article in a Dutch media website said 4 out of 5 assassinations in the Netherlands were linked to cocaine trafficking. In Europe, traffickers from Balkan countries now work with Latin American cartels, which is one reason why Europe has seen so much more cocaine use in recent years. In the Belgian port of Antwerp, authorities seized 116 metric tons of cocaine in 2023, a new record. Dutch customs seized about 60 metric tons that year, up almost a fifth from 2022. The DEA says these often extremely violent Balkan gangs leave the USA alone only because the Mexican cartels have pretty much sewn things up in the North American coke market. Because of the mafias in Europe, coke has steadily been getting purer and cheaper. According to the EU's Home Affairs Commissioner, it also means drug-related killings have started to rival terrorism. And all this is just so some guys in a toilet stall can get a dopamine rush so they can brag about how great they are. In short, coke is extremely addictive. Otherwise, the world wouldn't be seeing mini wars in the streets over it. But this next drug has turned the streets in the USA into what looks like something not from a war, but from a horror movie. "It's my wife and it's my life," sang the band The Velvet Underground in their song Heroin. The singer Lou Reed, then a heroin addict, talked about heroin taking him to a place where he just didn't care about a thing in the world. Heroin was his fix for all of life's problems. That's what heroin does. It makes all your problems go away while you're in the throes of the high. Unlike speed or coke or LSD, which aren't everyone's cup of tea because they can be too intense, heroin's soft landing into a bed of feathers can be an easy fall, provided the amount consumed isn't too much. This is what makes it the most addictive drug of all. It seemingly cures everything until it destroys everything. Former users often say heroin usually takes back 10 times what it gives. There are no free rides in life, and heroin exemplifies this to the extreme. In 1898, the German company Bayer & Co. introduced heroin to the world's drug market as a pain reliever and a cough suppressant. They said it was a remedy for many of life's common conditions. This seems ridiculous to us now, but you'll see in a few minutes how pharmaceutical firms tried something similar in the 21st century. Since heroin was introduced, it's been the go-to fix for artists, rock bands, and poets, and often traumatized hordes of the world's meanest streets. For many years, it was perhaps the most demonized drug of them all. Heroin, unlike cocaine, was often associated with being down and out. It tore families apart and it made people do anything for their fix, even though the withdrawal symptoms are not as bad or as dangerous as benzos and alcohol. One of the major problems with demonizing drugs has always been the fact that not telling the truth about them can lead to younger people not understanding the dangers or never believing adults because they were lied to about drugs. Your brain on drugs is not a fried egg. Heroin is supposed to feel good. After all, it ups your dopamine levels by about 200%. You might now be wondering, if both heroin and cocaine lead to the release of dopamine, why are they so different? Most recreational drugs, in fact, release more dopamine than is usually made in the brain, but they don't all produce the same feelings. Heroin converts to morphine in the brain, and it binds very rapidly to opioid receptors. Opioid receptors play a big role in regulating pain. Once activated, they inhibit pain signals in the brain and the spinal cord. That's why opioids are used in medical settings. The feeling is usually a surge of warmth, described as a rush. This usually comes with euphoria and drowsiness, but it can also make people quite upbeat and chatty, especially in lower doses. The pain it fixes for many people is also emotional pain. Heroin often becomes not a social drug, but something people do in the privacy of their own home, or their cardboard box or toilet cubicles at work. In higher doses, people can gouge out and nod off, which looks like them falling asleep while sitting up, perhaps falling forward over their keyboard at work and suddenly jolting back. The high can also result in the release of histamines, which is why heroin users tend to scratch a lot. To the advanced user, it's pretty obvious who's on heroin. Scratching is a giveaway, as are small pupils, nodding off at work, or sometimes being overly and insincerely friendly or glib. But the use of opiates at lower levels might not seem to have much of an outward effect on the user at all, which is why so many functional addicts hold down jobs and go about their lives normally and remain on the drug for many years, with hardly anyone knowing. You can look very normal on opiates, as is often the case for millions of Americans on prescription opiates. It's when you don't have them or do too much of them that makes people look like the so-called junkies. Tolerance can quickly develop with heroin, which means the body gets used to it, and so a higher dose is needed. Addicts often talk about chasing the first high, which they will never attain again. Heroin slowly rewires the brain. You start to need the heroin because the brain adapts to all that unearned dopamine being produced. Once addicted, they often say they take their heroin just to avoid getting sick. The withdrawal is physically very uncomfortable, but not as dangerous as coming off of booze or benzos. A woman told The Times, "It's like a demon crawling out of you. You'd rather just die and be done with it than go through that." And even if you do get through the 5 or so days of physical withdrawal, 2 or 3 intense days, your brain that got used to the heroin doesn't make as much dopamine anymore, so you can feel incredibly depressed. Dependence like this doesn't happen overnight. Users often have to do it daily for several weeks to form a dependence, although for some people it can take as little as 2 weeks. One of the biggest problems, evident in the fact that 1,106,900 U.S. residents died from overdoses from 1968 to 2020, is that it's not always easy to control how much of a dose you take. As little as 5 times over a safe dose can kill you. And street heroin can be maybe 10% or 90% pure. You just don't know what you're getting. The vast majority of fatal drug overdoses in the U.S. involve an opiate. In 2023, 295 Americans died every single day due to drugs, and most of those deaths were from opioids. Opioids are central nervous system depressants, so high doses can lead to respiratory depression. In short, you stop breathing and you nod off for eternity. Another major issue is the new synthetic opioid called fentanyl. It's about 50 times stronger than heroin and much cheaper to make. Just 2 milligrams can be lethal. Carfentanil, also a synthetic, is 100 times stronger than fentanyl. In the USA, 36,359 died from fentanyl overdoses in 2019. Over the next few years, it went up to 56,516, 70,601, and 73,838. Even scarier is the fact that authorities have found cocaine that has been contaminated with fentanyl. Traces have also been discovered in methamphetamine, MDMA, and fake prescription pills. The latter are often brand names such as OxyContin, Percocet, and Xanax, which were previously sometimes overprescribed to the American public by pharmaceutical giants and physicians. Such pills are in high demand, so criminals make counterfeit versions. Fentanyl's led to a new wave of overdose deaths in the U.S. A doctor explained to ABC News, "We think of it like waves, and with the first wave being prescription opioids, the second wave being heroin, the third wave being fentanyl, and this fourth wave is fentanyl with stimulants." Over 650,000 Americans have died in the opioid crisis since it began in the 1990s, and it doesn't look like things are about to improve. The waves are a tsunami of death and misery washing over America. Not helping things is the way pharmaceutical companies cleverly and sometimes insidiously marketed pain pills and put the heroin equivalents in nice boxes, which led to the use of opiates taking off in the USA among regular folks who never dreamed they'd essentially one day become junkies. Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin, is the company that springs to mind, but there are various kinds of so-called heroin pills made by multiple firms. Some of these companies wrongly said such pain pills were not very addictive, basing this on no credible evidence whatsoever. Heroin and other opiates, as it turns out, are highly addictive. but they were being treated like essential oils. It's not surprising then that the US Department of Health once famously said the United States makes up 4.4% of the world's population and consumes over 80% of the world's opioids. The US government cracked down after certain companies were exposed for essentially pushing drugs like heroin on the public. But many of the addicts this created were already hooked, so they went to the streets. In 2018, a study said that 75% of Americans who used opioids recreationally had started their drug-taking careers with legitimate prescriptions. There are stories of elderly people getting hooked on prescriptions, and when told the prescriptions were no longer available, they went out into the mean streets and scored bags of dope from people they'd never dream of meeting. Grannies of suburbia who'd never even smoked weed because they believed taking drugs was immoral or dangerous were now mixing with drug-peddling street gangs. It was eternally embarrassing for them, but heroin was that addictive. As we said, everything heroin gives you, all that warmth and courage and not giving a damn, will usually make you pay back tenfold. It's so addictive that it requires all your energy and time. You can't live without it. You can't travel without it. It becomes your ball and chain. You can become utterly selfish in your devotion to your high, someone you never imagined could exist. You might start constantly to lie. You might even steal. It can take everything you love away. And all the time it becomes less and less effective until you need it just to feel normal. Indeed, heroin is the epitome of the Faustian bargain, the deal with the devil. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here, should be embossed on the back of every opiate pill and brick of brown tar smack or China white heroin in existence. Once addicted, most recreational users often can't get enough of it. They do desperate things to get it. They don't care of their health. Many inject it, which at some point will likely cause an injury. They often inject stuff mixed with impurities. They shoot up evil combos designed to be stronger and so are much more lethal. Welcome to the American nightmare we mentioned at the beginning of this video. These so-called zombies in the streets are people who've likely taken heroin or fentanyl combined with a drug called xylazine. Xylazine, known on the streets as tranq, is actually for horses, seriously, and other animals too. It's a legitimate veterinary tranquilizer often used as a sedative. A paper in Science Direct explained, its primary goal is to calm down animals undergoing medical procedures or testing while minimizing their suffering. There was some testing on humans as a potential sedative, a painkiller, or an anesthetic, but the FDA put up a red light because of its effects on the central nervous system. It's good for pigs, but not for people, was the FDA's decision. Because it's never been approved for humans, this means drugs to counteract its toxicity in humans have never been created, and neither have ones to treat addiction to it. The zombie drug, therefore, is a fairly unknown entity in the world of human drug taking. We do know that injection sites can turn into ulcers, and if the ulcers aren't treated, they can turn into holes, and the holes can become infected, and so on until the limb is completely ruined. If you want a formal explanation, the study we just mentioned said, the mechanism by which xylazine causes skin wounds is not well understood, and wounds have been reported beyond the sites of local injection. It has been postulated that the pathogenesis involves peripheral vasoconstriction from A2 receptor activation. That means that the blood vessels become constricted, and so the affected area doesn't get enough blood, which can lead to the tissue dying. There's also been an increase in xylazine fatal overdoses. The CDC said they went up 30% from 2019 to 2020. In 2021, xylazine was said to have been a factor in 3,468 U.S. deaths, 73% of them men. It's when it's mixed with fentanyl, though, that it becomes really dangerous. More bad news is traditional opioid antagonists like Narcan, which can bring someone out of an opiate overdose, doesn't work on xylazine. There couldn't be a worse combo than fentanyl and xylazine, but xylazine is strong by itself. In a study in 2023, xylazine was found in drug samples in 36 states. First, fentanyl kicked heroin off the streets, and then sometime around 2020, xylazine arrived on the scene and rendered the already strong bag of fentanyl even stronger. The Department of Justice has partly blamed Chinese gangs. Writing in 2023, DEA has seized xylazine fentanyl mixtures in 48 of 50 states and in Washington, D.C. We know where this xylazine comes from. It comes as powder from China and as a liquid diverted from veterinary supply chains. A DEA report said, a kilogram of xylazine powder can be purchased online from Chinese suppliers with common prices ranging from $6 to $20 per kilogram. At this low of a price, its use as an adulterant might increase the profit for illicit drug traffickers as its psychoactive effects allow them to reduce the amount of fentanyl or heroin used in the mixture. The Chinese suppliers don't sell directly to the US. The finished drugs or precursors usually go to Mexico and then across the border. Even so, the demand for regular narcotics in the US is there, and it has been there for a long time. China didn't create the prescription opioid crisis, American companies did. Still, it's not helping the US that Chinese fentanyl and xylazine have hit the shores. According to the National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics, around 10 million American adults abuse opioids at least once a year, or about 3.8% of the entire population. And this number doesn't include people who use opioids as prescribed. The Brookings Institute wrote in 2023, an estimated 12.6% of the U.S. workforce receives an opioid prescription each year, and 75% of employers surveyed by the National Safety Council report that they have been directly affected by opioids. The global pharmaceutical market has seen massive growth during the past 20 years, with revenues worldwide totaling around $1.48 trillion in 2022. And now we have fake pain meds coming to the US via China or Mexico, pretending to be the legal ones that so many addicts dearly want. Here are 50 insane facts about meth, and just a warning, some of this is gonna get dark. Fact 50. As the saying goes, life imitates art, and when it comes to Breaking Bad, there have been quite a few real-life Walter Whites. One of them was literal, a man named, you guessed it, Walter White, topped the 2016 Most Wanted list in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, for the manufacture and selling of meth. He wasn't a teacher, but don't worry, there have been teachers who followed the fictional Mr. White's footsteps too. In 2011, a 74-year-old math professor from Boston University was charged with running a meth lab. Then in 2012, William Duncan, a junior high chemistry teacher in Cass County, Texas, was accused of cooking and selling meth. He was caught after attempting to sell his product to undercover cops in the parking lot of the school where he taught. Walter White would never. Fact 49. Ever wondered what the iconic blue crystals featured in Breaking Bad were made of? In a 2014 radio interview, Walter White himself revealed the secret. According to Bryan Cranston, it was cotton candy-flavored rock candy, or in his words, vile-tasting pieces of sugar. He also revealed that co-star Aaron Paul, who played Jesse, was getting sugar high on their supply. By that we mean he was eating the candy. Please don't sue us, Aaron. Speaking of Breaking Bad's baby blue meth, though, fact 48. Was there any truth to the idea of blue-tinged drugs, or was that just Hollywood magic? According to USA Today, there was a real meth cook who tinted his product with blue chalk, referring to the dyed version as Smurf dope. Classy. But the color wasn't the only part of Breaking Bad's candy meth that was weirdly accurate. Fact 47. According to DEA spokesman Steve Robertson, there have been rare reports of flavored meth popping up in California, Nevada, Washington, Idaho, Texas, New Mexico, Missouri, and Minnesota. Identified flavors include strawberry, chocolate, and cola, not to be confused with Coke. Yummy! Fact 46. You probably don't associate meth with a case of the sniffles, but one of the most effective ingredients used to treat the common cold has historically been used to manufacture meth. Pseudoephedrine, used as a decongestant and included in medications like Sudafed, was once available over the counter. However, in 2006 it was restricted in the United States after it became known as the ingredient of choice for methamphetamine home cooks. So now it's a whole lot harder to treat cold and flu symptoms without drowsiness. Thanks a lot, meth. Fact 45. Like many of the most infamous illegal drugs, there was a time when meth was used in a medical setting, and it was potentially given to some pretty famous patients. Dr. Max Jacobson, a doctor to the stars in the 60s and 70s, earned the nickname Dr. Feelgood with many of his high-profile patients. His treatments just so happened to include amphetamines and methamphetamines from time to time. Who was he injecting these mysterious drug cocktails, which may or may not have included meth, into? Well, just a few people you might have heard of, like Ingrid Bergman, Elizabeth Taylor, Nelson Rockefeller, and John F. Kennedy himself. That's right, Jacobson was injecting amphetamines into the President of the United States for his back pain. His unusual and unethical methods, emphasis on the meth, were exposed by the New York Times in 1972, and Jacobson lost his medical license in 1975, which, makes sense. His ethical conduct was pretty methed up. Fact 44. Speaking of the dentist, meth use can spell serious trouble for anyone that needs to be put under for surgery dental or otherwise. Not only does meth interact with anesthesia, but regular use of stimulants increases the risk of heart failure during surgery. For a long time, meth users, surgeons may need to perform an ultrasound of the heart beforehand to evaluate how it's functioning. So if your surgeon asks about recreational drug use, they're probably not trying to be a narc, they're trying to make sure you don't die on the table. Fact 43. One of the most infamous side effects of meth is meth mouth, or extreme tooth decay. But what about meth causes this? First, meth use reduces saliva production. Saliva is a barrier against acid wear on the tooth enamel. If saliva production is reduced, the teeth develop more cavities as the enamel is worn away. Meth users will often clench or grind their teeth, causing them to break. And add in the fact that many meth users consume high-sugar beverages to combat their dry mouth, the decreased blood to oral tissues that results from methamphetamines, lesions in the gums and cheeks caused by smoking meth, and top it all off with the likelihood that prolonged meth users are less likely to notice oral pain or seek medical attention, and you're looking at a dentist's nightmare. Fact 42. Meth is often associated with rural America today, but it was actually first invented in Japan. Chemist Nagai Nagiyoshi synthesized methamphetamine from ephedrine in 1893. Later, Akira Ogata synthesized it in a crystalline form in 1919. The process by which he synthesized meth in this form involved a mixture of red phosphorus, iodine, and ephedrine, and it's a process still used by some meth manufacturers today. Nice to know that humble, small-town meth cooks are keeping traditions alive. Fact 41. So, what's the deal with ephedrine? Ephedrine is a chemical derived from ephedra, an evergreen shrub native to China and India. It's been used in traditional Chinese medicine for over 5,000 years to treat asthma, bronchitis, and symptoms of cold and flu, such as congestion, chills, cough, and fever. It can be distilled into a chemical form known as ephedrine, or synthetic versions of the chemical like pseudoephedrine. That's right, we're back to Sudafed. Because ephedrine can be used to make meth, pseudoephedrine can be used for the same thing. Ephedra was sold commercially in supplements for weight loss, energy, and athletic performance until it was banned in 2004. Fact 40. So remember how ephedra was used to treat asthma? Well, in 1932, the American pharmaceutical industry had the same idea about amphetamine. Big pharma company SmithKline & French released Benzedrine, an amphetamine inhaler marketed for the treatment of asthma and nasal congestion. It was available to customers without a prescription, and people quickly caught on to its, well, let's just say recreational possibilities. In order to prevent abuse of the inhalers, the company added hot pepper extract to Benzedrine, hoping the sting of capsaicin would stop people from huffing the fumes when it wasn't necessary. It's uncertain how effective this deterrent was, but the company eventually phased out the use of amphetamine in its inhalers. Asthmatics who no longer had to inhale hot pepper extract probably rejoiced. Fact 39. At this point, the word meth is starting to sound like a nonsense word, so let's talk about some other nicknames for it. According to official DEA documentation, some of the confirmed street terms for meth include biker's coffee, chalk, Christie, crystal, crank, glass, ice, popsicle, rocket fuel, speed, witch's teeth, devil's dandruff, and zip. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Pun intended. Actually, we intend all of our puns. It's just a nice little way of making you suffer. Moving on. Fact 38. Meth goes by a lot of different names, and it also comes in a variety of forms. There's crystal meth, of course, which we've already covered. Crystal meth is the most potent form of the drug and is generally smoked or injected by drug users. It also comes in a powder form known as speed, which can be mixed with other substances and snorted. Then there's base, which is a more potent and pure form than powder and is a damp or oily substance with a white, yellow, or brown color. This is usually injected or swallowed by meth users. None of those sound all that appealing to us. Fact 37. There's another form of meth we haven't covered yet, prescription meth. That's right, methamphetamine is available in prescription form. Okay, it's not exactly true. It's a form of the drug known as methamphetamine hydrochloride, also known as disoxin. This drug is a controlled substance that is occasionally prescribed for the treatment of ADHD. Amphetamines can be very useful in the treatment of ADHD, including Adderall and Ritalin. It's important to note that these drugs don't have the same effects when used to treat this specific medical condition, as they do when taken recreationally by those who don't need them. As the saying goes, the dose makes the poison, and there is an ocean of difference between taken as directed Ritalin and crystal meth. That was heavy, so how about some music to take our minds off it? Fact 36. Hey, you know that song Semi-Charmed Life by Third Eye Blind? Yeah, you do, even if you don't realize it. Maybe you heard it on the radio or while in a dressing room in a department store somewhere. The song was massively popular on release and continues to be used in ads, movies, and TV shows, and it gets a lot of radio play. It's a pretty cheerful song if you don't focus on the lyrics so much. If you do, you might realize it's actually about meth. You might notice the line, "The sky was gold, it was rose, I was taking sips of it through my nose, and I wish that I could get back there, someplace back there, smiling in the pictures you would take. Doing crystal meth will lift you up until you break." Pretty heavy material for a song once covered by Alvin and the Chipmunks. Fact 35. Speaking of artists writing about meth use, Jack Kerouac famously wrote On the Road, but he also was on amphetamines. While he wasn't using meth per se, he was very fond of Benzedrine and would write to other famed beat poet Allen Ginsberg, "Benny has made me see a lot." By the way, On the Road was written in only 3 weeks with no paragraph breaks on one giant scroll made out of taped together sheets of paper. But that's probably not related. Fact 34. It's been a minute since we talked about Breaking Bad. Let's fix that. The creators of the show reached out to the Drug Enforcement Administration during the process of production, and the DEA chemists came on board to teach Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston how to make crystal meth. Which brings us to our next fact. Fact 33. The science is pretty accurate on Breaking Bad, but that doesn't mean it's a step-by-step instruction manual for a do-it-yourself meth lab. For example, real meth of the purity discussed on the show would not actually be blue, but colorless. The show used a science consultant, Dr. Donna Nelson, a chemistry professor at the University of Oklahoma, to advise on the show's portrayal of meth cooking, particularly in the P2P process. The portrayal is largely accurate, but some details were left out to avoid accidentally inspiring any enterprising copycats. Fact 32. Wait a second, what's the P2P process? We already talked about the process of crystallizing ephedrine and pseudoephedrine using phosphorus and iodine, but as there have been more crackdowns on ephedrine and its synthetic forms, the P2P process has increased in popularity among meth manufacturers. The P2P process is named after phenyl-2-propanone, a precursor chemical to pseudoephedrine, and it also involves aluminum, methylamine, and mercuric chloride. Using this precursor chemical allows meth cooks to get around restrictions on pseudoephedrine while still generating product, though the product is considerably lower quality. Fact 31. Bet you didn't know how big of a role meth played in World War II. German pharmaceutical company Temmler released a new exciting drug in 1938 called Pervitin. It was a miracle drug that could make people more alert, less depressed, and more productive. Oh yeah, and it was a pill version of methamphetamine. A military doctor named Otto Ranke discovered the possibilities of this magic little pill, and soon it was the go-to stimulant for Nazi Germany. In 1 month in 1940, the German military went through 35 million meth tablets. What better way to stay up for days at a time and march for miles without rest than to just be absolutely cranked out of your mind on meth? The German soldiers' new best friend fueled them through the Blitzkrieg invasion of France, among other missions. It reached a point where they were so desperate to keep the sweet stimulants flowing that soldiers were writing letters to their families from the front and asking them to send not photos, not letters, but more Pervitin. It seemed like this drug was going to win Germany the war. Well, we all know how that worked out. Hey, speaking of failures, fact 30. Adolf Hitler, what a loser! He was always known for having boundless energy for long war strategy meetings and loud speeches about all the things he hated. Where did he get all that energy? Many historians say it was a cocktail of various drugs, including cocaine and crystal meth. I guess it's pretty exhausting being one of history's greatest monsters. He needed some chemical assistance. Fact 29. It should be noted that it wasn't just the German military using performance-enhancing drugs during World War II. American soldiers used Benzedrine as their combat stimulant of choice, taking it to keep themselves awake and alert and to stave off battle fatigue. Meanwhile, the British soldiers consumed Dexedrine for the same purpose. So everybody was on some kind of amphetamine, and they were all shooting at each other. The art of war. Fact 28. Japanese kamikaze pilots also used methamphetamine during World War II, taking large doses via injection before their missions. They were also given pills made from methamphetamine mixed with green tea powder and then stamped with the crest of the emperor. These were known as storming tablets. After the war ended, many soldiers returned home with meth habits and the drug gained momentum in the streets of Japan. Isn't war just awesome for everyone involved? Fact 27. Humanity hasn't just used meth as a weapon of war, we've also used it for the sake of vanity. Methamphetamine and other amphetamines have been a frequent ingredient in diet pills over the years, starting in the 1950s and 60s. Many of these diet pills caused heart problems and other health complications, and meth-adjacent ingredients still make an appearance in these types of drugs in the 21st century. In 2010, a weight loss pill was pulled from the market after it was found to contain ephedrine. Love yourself and stay the hell away from diet pills, folks. Fact 26. One of the worst imaginable outcomes of meth use is an overdose. Warning signs of an acute meth overdose include sudden dangerous spikes in body temperature and blood pressure, chest pain, confusion, anxiety, dilated pupils, rapid eye movement, vomiting, nausea, trouble breathing, and convulsions. Like with cocaine, it's difficult to determine the exact amount of meth that will trigger an acute overdose. The overdose threshold can be affected by a person's age, mass, metabolism, pre-existing health conditions, and the method by which they are ingesting the drug, whether swallowing, snorting, smoking, or injecting it. Fact 25. So, let's say someone's trying to get off of meth once and for all. What does methamphetamine withdrawal look like? Well, the severity of the withdrawal symptoms depends on the person, as well as how much meth they're using and for how long. The physical symptoms of withdrawal can include exhaustion, disturbed sleep patterns, dry mouth, headaches, anxiety, hallucinations, and muscle spasms. Because of the potential severity of these symptoms, medically supervised withdrawal is recommended in cases of heavy meth use. Fact 24. If meth is so bad for the body, why do people even do it? Taking meth floods the brain with dopamine, a neurotransmitter that plays a major role in emotions, bodily movement, and feelings of both pleasure and pain. In lab experiments that compared the effects of sex versus meth on dopamine levels in the brain, animals experienced a spike in dopamine during sex that went from 100 to 200 units. Cocaine caused a spike to 350 units. Meth cranked things all the way up to 1,250 units. There is no natural way to get that kind of dopamine spike that meth can create. This makes it incredibly addictive and has consequences for the way the brain can experience pleasure overall. Fact 23. Long-term use of meth impacts the ability of the brain to naturally produce dopamine. Chronic meth users have lower levels of dopamine receptors than those who abstain from it. So, when meth users try to get clean, their ability to feel pleasure is decreased, and they often plunge into depression, sending them straight back to the only drug that can make them feel normal. Eventually, the brain is able to regain its ability to generate dopamine, but it takes time, and the amount of time is different for every person. But that's not the only terrifying long-term effect of meth. Fact 22. Prolonged meth use can also trigger hallucinations and psychosis. One of the most common and distressing hallucinations is the tactile or physical sensation hallucination of bugs crawling across or under the skin. This is often referred to as meth bugs, ice mites, meth mites, and crank bugs. It can lead to aggressive picking and scratching of the skin, leaving open wounds that can become infected or even lead to deadly sepsis. Meth use also suppresses the immune system, making the likelihood of infection or related conditions all that much higher. All in all, these hallucinations are painful and terrifying for both the person experiencing them and anyone trying to care for them. Fact 21. Meth isn't just dangerous to the brain and body, it's also dangerous to the environment. You've heard of meth labs. You probably also heard about meth lab explosions. The two go hand in hand. Turns out when you combine dangerous substances, flammable chemical reactions, and corner-cutting safety procedures, the results, well, can blow up in your face. Because meth cooking requires a multitude of complicated chemical reactions, it's easy for something to go wrong when handled by untrained hands. And the fact that the chemicals involved are extremely volatile, such as acetone, ammonia, and other solvents, and the fact that there is usually an open flame around, it's easy to see how explosions happen. Even a small spark or static electricity could set off an explosion. Top it all off with the secrecy surrounding meth labs, making them even less safe and more likely to be placed in rural areas where fires can spread quickly and you got yourself a disaster on your hands. Meth lab explosions are characterized by a quick eruption of flames and a shockwave likely to destroy the structure and send scraps of metal flying. From there, the fire can spread and the toxic chemicals can seep into the soil and the nearby water. Nobody wants a bunch of cranked up squirrels running around. Just kidding, it wouldn't actually get the squirrels high, it would just poison them. Fact 20. Not all meth labs are in trailers and in sheds in the middle of nowhere. Some of them are sitting on top of premium real estate. Take, for example, the $1.5 million meth house spotted for sale on Zillow in San Jose. The house went on the market in October 2023 after its occupant was arrested for stockpiling weapons and manufacturing meth on the premises. But hey, once you get past the disused meth lab, it's a pretty charming little place. Good starter home. Fact 19. Scientific advancement requires a lot of commitment and willingness to do new things. One of those new things is giving meth to pond snails, at least if you're Barbara Song from Washington State University, whose 2010 experiment involved dosing those water-dwelling snails with meth. The study found that the drug stimulated learning and memory, offering a bit of insight into the nature of drug effects on the brain. The use of crystal meth in the snails influenced the formation of vivid memories and allowed them to retain information for longer. And that sounds pretty good. But don't start taking meth to improve your memory. First of all, you're not a snail, probably. And second of all, the creation of these vivid memories makes meth users more likely to relapse when they're surrounded by sensory input that triggers memories linked to their drug use. They learned all that from getting snails super high. Fact 18. Oh, by the way, that's not the only experiment that involved giving meth to an animal to see what happens. Taser International funded a study also in 2010, what was in the water that year, to determine the effects of tasers on targets who were high off their faces on methamphetamine. So how did they measure that? By pumping a bunch of sheep full of meth and zapping them with tasers, of course. Some of the smaller sheep, less than 70 pounds, experienced heart-related complications from the combination of tasers and meth, but none of the sheep experienced fatal complications. So it turns out that combining tasers with meth probably won't kill somebody. But we still wouldn't want to test that on our own. Fact 17. North Korea isn't the first place that comes to mind when you think of the meth trade, but over the years the country has become dominated by the amphetamine trade. While it is still illegal there, the stigma against the drug has faded over time, and officials are more than happy to look the other way when bribed by meth manufacturers. According to Andrei Lankov, a North Korean expert at Kookmin University in South Korea, meth, until recently, has been largely seen inside North Korea as a kind of very powerful energy drug, something like Red Bull amplified. It was even a nationally sanctioned practice for a while, according to Business Insider. From the 1990s to the 2000s, the country made its own meth and trafficked it through diplomatic channels to raise money. As the 2000s wore on and the official state manufacturing slowed, private and independent meth manufacturers began to pop up. In 2010, China seized $60 million worth of drugs, including meth, being trafficked from North Korea. Fact 16. Earlier, we talked about the difficulties of going through meth withdrawal. If you're going through withdrawal yourself, it's important to seek out support, medical and otherwise. But what if you're the person offering that support? Experts agree that taking these steps can allow you to help out a loved one going through withdrawal from methamphetamines. Make sure they sleep a lot. Make sure they stay hydrated. Give them healthy foods. Remind them that their brain and body both need time to heal. Acknowledging that the process is hard and painful and that it takes courage. And generally uplifting them in their efforts to quit abusing the drug. Helping a loved one through withdrawals can make you feel powerless, but you can do a lot just by being there. Now that was kind of heavy, so let's talk about something weird. Fact 15. Meth smuggling is nothing new. So how about smuggling meth and sharks? A Louisiana man was arrested in August 2022 in the Gulf of Mexico when authorities determined that he had too many sharks on board. Oh, and he had a bunch of crystal meth too. It was bull shark fishing season and he had more than the legal limit of sharks, limited to just one per vessel. And as it turns out, the legal limit for meth is absolutely no meth at all, so he was over that as well. He wasn't smuggling the meth, he was just smoking it as far as anyone could tell, but still a crime. Don't smoke meth and drive boats, kids. And definitely don't do it with sharks, that's just an accident waiting to happen. Fact 14. Fish and meth just don't go together. In April 2024, U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers seized nearly 50 pounds of methamphetamine hidden in an ice chest full of dead fish. The driver was attempting to cross the border between the U.S. and Mexico when a scan spotted irregularities in his ice chest. Inside the ice chest, they found a bunch of dead fish and 47 pounds of meth. Stop traveling with meth and fish, folks. Fact 13. Now let's talk about some myths. Some messy meth misinformation you don't want to miss. Hey, new sobriety test just dropped. Say that 5 times fast to prove you're not on meth. Anyway, one popular myth is that using meth once immediately results in addiction. That is untrue. The fact of the matter is that addiction develops from repeated use. Research suggests that it can take 2 to 5 years for meth use to develop into addiction. Though take that with a grain of salt because it does vary from person to person, and it works differently for smoking versus injection. Fact 12. Another meth myth is that the average length of time from first use of meth to death by meth is 5 years. There's no data to suggest the veracity of that claim. For example, methamphetamine users in Missouri entering treatment for the first time have been using meth for nearly 10 years on average. So as long as someone is still breathing, it's never too late for them to seek treatment for meth abuse. Fact 11. Speaking of which, another often repeated myth is that meth addiction is not treatable. Clinical studies have shown that this is completely untrue. In fact, treatment for meth abuse has similar outcomes to treatment for abuse of other drugs, such as cocaine. The two groups do not differ in treatment adherence, clinic attendance, drug-free urine tests, or successful completion of rehab programs. Of course, longer periods of treatment correlate to more success. For example, meth users who undergo treatment for at least 4 months have almost double the rate of success in avoiding relapse. Fact 10. Another myth about meth is that it causes holes in your brain. While meth undoubtedly has a negative impact on brain function when it's being used, and it can cause damage to nerve cells due to neurotoxic properties, these effects are not permanent. Dark areas visible on brain scans are not holes, but rather they're areas of low or no function. Over time, this damaged tissue is able to repair itself as long as there is no further use. Some of the damage can be permanent, but there are no holes. And again, as long as someone is still breathing, it's never too late to make a change. Fact 9. It can be dangerous to combine meth with prescription drugs. Some of the most dangerous drugs to combine with meth are antidepressants. When mixed with meth, antidepressants can cause serotonin syndrome, an excessive release of serotonin that leads to confusion, rapid heart rate, high blood pressure, seizures, and even death. It can also increase the risks of heart attacks and can worsen the mental health conditions that the antidepressants are being used for. Fact 8. Another extremely dangerous type of prescription drug to mix with meth is opioids. Combining meth with opioids can lead to severe respiratory depression, where the breathing slows to a dangerous rate. The stimulant effects of the meth can cause the sedative effects of opioids to go unnoticed, resulting in accidental overdose of one or the other. Finally, consuming both puts a tremendous strain on the cardiovascular system, and it can lead to a stroke or heart attack. When it comes to medications, meth does not play well with others. Fact 7. We've referenced the purity of meth a few times in this video, but what does impure meth have in it? What's it being cut with? Common additives, all of which are toxic to consume, include lithium metal, hydrochloric acid, iodine, sulfuric acid, and red phosphorus. Then, like many other drugs today, meth can also be cut with fentanyl. Fact 6. It's good to be concerned about what you're putting into your body. However, it's probably best not to call the police and then ask them to test your meth for you. That's what a Florida man, who else, did in 2022. When he suspected he had been sold bath salts instead of meth, he decided rather than talk it out with his dealer, he called the cops and asked them for their expert opinion. It did not end well for him. Fact 5. One word that's often associated with meth is tweaker or tweaking, but what does that mean? According to the National Library of Medicine, tweaking refers to the state of methamphetamine misuse, wherein the drug user becomes paranoid and irritable due to a lack of sleep. At this point, they have usually gone without sleep for somewhere between 3 and 15 days. During this stage, the person is unable to get as high as they usually do and becomes frustrated by the need to up their dosage. They can become violent, unpredictable, and potentially dangerous to others or themselves. This particular stage can be identified by rapid eye movement, up to 10 times faster than normal, a quivering voice, and jerky movements. Fact 4. Florida man and meth seem to go together like peanut butter and jelly. Another story saw Florida man hiding meth in, well, let's just say his rear after a hit-and-run car crash. The driver hit a paraplegic bicyclist hand-pedaling on the road and immediately fled the scene. But karma was swift and the authorities tracked the man down and found him with meth between his cheeks, not the ones on his face. Fact 3. Meth first exploded in popularity as an illegal drug in the 1980s, but it is still very much in style in certain parts of the United States. According to the Pew Research Center, from 2015 to 2019, arrests for meth possession increased by 59%, and self-reported possession of meth increased by 22%. Fact 2. If you or someone you know is struggling with meth abuse, there are resources available. The National Institute on Drug Abuse recommends multiple potential courses of action, including the Matrix model, a 16-week behavioral treatment that combines therapy, family education, and counseling with traditional 12-step support. There are also contingency management interventions, which use positive reinforcement to assist with abstinence from drugs. Look into your local resources as well, as there are lots of people who want to help. Fact 1. Let's take things out on a lighter note. Say you're designing an awareness campaign for the issue of meth abuse in your area. Say you have to come up with a catchy slogan, something that gets people thinking about the meth crisis and how we're all in it together when it comes to solving it. The South Dakota government went with the well-intentioned but disastrous "Meth, we're on it." South Dakota has indeed been seeing a troubling uptick in meth usage, with twice as many teenagers using it in the state than the national average. However, we're not so sure this campaign really gets the message across, unless they're trying to imply that the only way to have enough energy to stop meth is to start smoking it too. If you can't beat them, join them. Note, we here at the Infographics Show do not, under any circumstances, endorse joining them. Booze, hooch, cracking open a cold one with the boys, Southern comfort. Whatever way you want to slice it, alcohol is a big part of our lives and culture. And who hasn't gone a little overboard at times? But what's actually happening under the hood when you get drunk? And what consequences might this have for you down the road? Two very different but oddly similar people will help us find out. Meet Jake, a lively college student who loves socializing, and David, a middle-aged man with years of experience in self-medicating through life's ups and downs. Their experiences will shed light on both the short-term and long-term effects of heavy drinking. Jake is your typical college student, keen on making the most of his university years. He's often found at parties and social gatherings where alcohol is a frequent companion. His story will illustrate the immediate, short-term effects of excessive alcohol use, from impaired judgment to the risk of blackouts. Jake's experiences at college parties, typical for many young adults, will provide a backdrop to understand how alcohol can acutely affect the body and mind. On the other side, we have David, a seasoned professional with a long history of navigating the highs and lows of life, including a complicated relationship with alcohol. David's journey will explore the long-term consequences of prolonged alcohol use, such as liver damage, increased risk of heart disease, and potential cognitive decline. His story represents a common scenario for many individuals who have experienced years of alcohol consumption and are now facing its cumulative effects. So let's start with Jake. Here he is on a typical Friday night. The evening kicks off with a college party. The keg is tapped, the liquor is flowing, and the conversation is lively. As he consumes alcohol, the packed environment becomes more exhilarating, and his inhibitions begin to lower. Science accounts for this change. Alcohol impairs the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is responsible for judgment and decision-making. For Jake, this means his ability to assess risks and foresee consequences is significantly diminished. He starts engaging in behaviors he wouldn't normally consider. These might be non-harmful, like the way he's able to feel looser and freer on the dance floor. But they also might be riskier, like accepting dangerous dares from friends. As the party progresses, Jake's decision-making skills continue to deteriorate. He finds himself in situations that, while under the influence, seem fun and harmless, but are actually pretty risky. This is a direct reflection of findings from research that emphasize how alcohol consumption leads to increased risk-taking. Jake, now less aware of the potential dangers, becomes more prone to accidents and injuries, a common issue in alcohol-fueled settings. Meanwhile, Jake's friends, who are also drinking, start to notice his erratic behavior. They see him taking risks that are out of character, illustrating the social ripple effect of alcohol's impact on judgment. This scenario is supported by research showing that alcohol not only affects individual behavior, but can also alter dynamics within a group, leading to a collective increase in risk-taking activities. As the night launches forward, Jake's alcohol consumption continues to increase. Gradually, he begins to feel the effects. His movements are no longer as coordinated, and his balance is off. This is a direct result of alcohol's impact on the cerebellum, the part of the brain responsible for motor control. Research demonstrates how alcohol depresses the nervous system, leading to a decrease in motor coordination. For Jake, this means tasks that require fine motor skills, like texting or even walking straight, become challenging. As Jake tries to navigate through the crowded party, his difficulty with balance becomes more apparent. The rooms are packed, with wall-to-wall people, and he bumps into them left and right. At one point, he stumbles into the keg. Despite his unsteady gait and impaired coordination, Jake insists on keeping up with his friends on the dance floor. However, his dancing is clumsy, and he struggles to keep up with the rhythm. This scenario is a classic example of how alcohol can give individuals a false sense of confidence in their abilities, masking their physical limitations. Studies show that while individuals might feel more confident in their motor skills, their actual performance is significantly impaired under the influence of alcohol. As the night wears on, Jake's motor skills deteriorate further. He finds it increasingly difficult to perform simple tasks, such as opening a bottle or picking up his phone. This progression aligns with scientific findings that note that the impairment of motor skills intensifies with higher levels of alcohol consumption. At one point, Jake attempts to navigate a set of stairs, a task that proves too challenging in his current state. His stumble and near fall are a stark reminder of the dangers posed by alcohol-induced impairment of motor skills. Fortunately, his friends are there to assist him, preventing a potential accident. However, as the night reaches its peak, Jake decides to climb onto a table to dance, ignoring the potential danger. This decision, fueled by his impaired judgment, results in a fall. This incident is a prime example of research linking alcohol consumption with an increased likelihood of injury due to poor decision-making and physical impairment. In the emergency room, Jake is treated for minor injuries. The medical staff explains to him how alcohol impairs the brain's ability to make safe decisions, a lesson that Jake takes to heart. This experience becomes a turning point for him, highlighting the immediate and potentially serious consequences of impaired judgment due to alcohol consumption. The next day, Jake will reflect on the events of the party. He'll realize how his behavior could have led to a more severe consequence. This reflection is an important process in understanding the risks associated with alcohol use, particularly for young adults who are still developing their decision-making skills. While alcohol might temporarily enhance your mood, it significantly compromises physical coordination and motor control, posing risks to both the imbibing individual and those around them. Let's get back to the night of the party to look at a few more side effects of Jake's alcohol intake. As Jake continues to take shots and chug beers, his speech starts to slur, and he begins to exhibit signs of confusion. This change is a direct consequence of alcohol's depressive effect on the central nervous system, which slows down cognitive functions and affects the brain's ability to process language. Studies explain that alcohol impairs the areas of the brain involved in speech production, leading to slurred speech, a common indicator of intoxication. Jake's friends notice the change in his speech and his difficulty in forming coherent sentences. The symptom is not just embarrassing, it is also a clear sign of the level of alcohol impairment. Research indicates that slurred speech is often one of the first noticeable signs of alcohol's impact on the brain's speech centers. For Jake, this manifests as a struggle to communicate effectively, a problem that becomes increasingly apparent as the night progresses. Along with slurred speech, Jake begins to experience confusion. When his friends are explaining the rules of a drinking game, he finds it difficult to follow the conversation. This cognitive impairment is a result of alcohol's effect on the brain's ability to process and interpret information. According to research, alcohol's consumption, especially in excessive amounts, can lead to a decrease in cognitive processing speed and a diminished ability to focus and understand complex information. Jake's confusion is not limited to verbal communication. He also shows signs of disorientation, eventually having trouble remembering where he is and how he got there. This is consistent with scientific findings, which note that alcohol can impair short-term memory and spatial orientation, contributing to a state of confusion and disorientation in intoxicated individuals. As the party winds down, Jake begins feeling increasingly nauseous. This unpleasant sensation soon escalates to vomiting, a common reaction to excessive alcohol consumption. Alcohol irritates the stomach lining and increases the production of stomach acid, which can lead to feelings of nausea. Vomiting is actually the body's way of expelling the irritant, in this case, the excess alcohol. The nausea and vomiting Jake experiences are more than just immediate discomforts, they're signs of alcohol poisoning, a potentially dangerous condition. As noted in the research, alcohol poisoning occurs when the amount of alcohol in the bloodstream reaches toxic levels, overwhelming the body's ability to process it. The symptoms, including nausea and vomiting, serve as a warning that the body is struggling to cope with the amount of alcohol ingested. Jake's situation highlights the importance of understanding the body's limits when it comes to alcohol consumption. While some vomiting after drinking might seem common in social situations, the truth is it is a serious indicator that the body is dealing with more alcohol than it can handle. This is further emphasized in studies showing how repeated episodes of alcohol-induced vomiting can lead to long-term damage of the esophagus and stomach. As Jake recovers from the immediate effects of his nausea, he faces the challenge of rehydrating and replenishing the nutrients lost through vomiting. Alcohol is a diuretic, and the act of vomiting exacerbates the body's dehydration. Many people forget the need for proper hydration and electrolyte balance after episodes of heavy drinking and vomiting. Replenishing fluids can help individuals to avoid further complications. Jake's experiences serve as a cautionary tale about the risks of excessive alcohol consumption and the importance of listening to one's body. Nausea and vomiting are not just minor side effects of a night of drinking. They are serious symptoms that should not be ignored or taken lightly. The morning after the party, Jake wakes up with a foggy memory of the previous night's events. He experiences what is known as an alcohol-induced blackout, a phenomenon characterized by a loss of memory for events that occurred while heavily intoxicated. During a blackout, alcohol disrupts the brain's ability to form new long-term memories. While Jake was conscious and active during the party, his brain was unable to retain new memories due to the high levels of alcohol in his system. Blackouts are particularly concerning because they indicate a high level of alcohol intoxication, which can have serious consequences. Studies show that blackouts are often associated with riskier behaviors and poorer decision-making. For Jake, this means that he may have engaged in activities or made choices during the party that he cannot remember, potentially putting himself or others at risk. As Jake tries to piece together the events of the night, he realizes there are significant gaps in his memory. He relies on his friends to fill in all the details, which include moments he is not proud of, like falling off that table while dancing. This reliance on others for information about his own actions is a sobering experience for Jake, highlighting the vulnerability that comes with alcohol-induced blackouts. The experience of a blackout is a clear indicator that Jake's alcohol consumption exceeded safe limits. In fact, blackouts are more likely to occur when alcohol is consumed rapidly, causing a sharp rise in blood alcohol concentration. For Jake, this was likely the result of drinking large quantities of alcohol in a short period. Jake's encounters with blackouts also raise concerns about the potential impact on his brain health. Consistent heavy drinking and resultant blackouts can lead to long-term changes in brain function. Repeated episodes can impair cognitive abilities and memories, even while sober. The morning after the party, Jake wakes up feeling the classic symptoms of a hangover: headache, nausea, fatigue, and an overwhelming sense of dehydration. These symptoms are the body's response to the after effects of excessive alcohol consumption. Research shows that hangovers are partly caused by dehydration, as alcohol is a diuretic, leading to increased urine production and consequently loss of fluids and electrolytes. Jake's pounding headache is a direct result of this dehydration, as well as the dilation of blood vessels in the brain caused by alcohol. Alcohol-induced vasodilation combined with dehydration can lead to severe headaches, a common complaint during hangovers. For Jake, the pain is debilitating, making it difficult to focus on anything else. The nausea Jake feels is also a common hangover symptom. Alcohol irritates the stomach lining and increases the production of stomach acid, leading to feelings of nausea and sometimes continued vomiting. The gastric distress is a typical consequence of heavy drinking, adding to the discomfort of the hangover. Fatigue is yet another common hallmark of Jake's hangover. Despite sleeping for several hours, he wakes up feeling exhausted. Alcohol totally disrupts normal sleep patterns, reducing the quality of sleep and leading to feelings of fatigue the next day. For Jake, this means that even though he spent many hours in bed, his body and mind do not feel rested. What other gifts does this hangover bestow? Jake also experiences a dry mouth and an intense thirst, further signs of dehydration. This is partly because alcohol inhibits the production of the hormone vasopressin, which helps regulate the body's water balance. This inhibition leads to increased urine production and dehydration. For Jake, rehydrating becomes a priority as he tries to recover from the hangover, which takes up most of his day. Jake's experience with a hangover illustrates the wide range of physical discomforts and disruptions caused by excessive alcohol consumption. It serves as a reminder of the importance of moderation and the need to be aware of alcohol's powerful effects on the body. Jake's story highlights the fact that while alcohol might be a common feature in social settings, its after effects can significantly impact one's health and well-being. So we've discussed many of the acute or immediate effects of alcohol. Ready to move on to some of the longer-term effects? So let's meet David, a middle-aged man who's been consuming alcohol regularly for years. Sadly, David has recently been diagnosed with liver damage, a direct consequence of his long-term drinking habits. The liver, responsible for breaking down and removing harmful substances, including alcohol, can become overwhelmed by excessive and prolonged alcohol consumption. Scientific research explains that chronic alcohol use can lead to various forms of liver disease, including fatty liver, alcoholic hepatitis, and cirrhosis. David's diagnosis is a wake-up call, highlighting the serious health consequences of long-term heavy drinking. David's condition began with fatty liver, a stage where fat starts to accumulate in liver cells. Initially, this condition was asymptomatic, so David was unaware of the developing problem, but fatty liver is often the first stage of alcohol-related liver disease, and it can progress to more severe forms if alcohol consumption continues. For David, this progression went unnoticed until symptoms started to appear. As David's condition progressed to alcoholic hepatitis, he began to experience symptoms like jaundice, abdominal pain, and fatigue. Alcoholic hepatitis is an inflammation of the liver. This condition can be severe and is often a precursor to cirrhosis, which is the final and irreversible stage of alcohol-related liver disease. Cirrhosis, the stage David is currently facing, is characterized by scarring of the liver tissue, which impairs the liver's ability to function effectively. This scarring is the result of long-term continuous damage to the liver. For David, this diagnosis means facing the reality that his liver can no longer regenerate and repair itself as it once could. The impact of liver disease extends beyond the liver itself. David learns from his doctor that complications can include an increased risk of bleeding disorders, kidney failure, and even liver cancer. These potential complications are highlighted in studies emphasizing the broad impact of liver disease on overall health. Reflecting on his past drinking habits, David wishes he had recognized the signs earlier and taken steps to reduce his alcohol intake. He's now starting to understand the importance of moderation and the irreversible consequences of ignoring the body's limits when it comes to alcohol consumption. What else is going on with David? Well, his long history with alcohol has not only affected his liver, but also his heart. Recently, he was additionally diagnosed with an alcohol-related heart condition, a development that took him by surprise. Chronic alcohol consumption can lead to an array of cardiovascular problems, including hypertension, arrhythmias, and cardiomyopathy. Excessive drinking over time significantly increases the risk of heart disease. For David, this means confronting the reality that his years of heavy drinking have had a profound impact on his heart health. One of the first signs of trouble for David was the development of high blood pressure or hypertension. Alcohol can raise blood pressure to unhealthy levels. Over time, this increased pressure strains the heart, leading to a higher risk of heart attack and stroke. David's diagnosis of hypertension was a clear signal that his drinking habits were taking a toll on his cardiovascular system. In addition to hypertension, David also experienced episodes of irregular heartbeat, known as arrhythmias. Alcohol-induced arrhythmias, particularly atrial fibrillation, are common among heavy drinkers. These irregular heartbeats can be unsettling and potentially dangerous, increasing the risk of stroke and other heart-related complications. David's heart problems further escalated to alcoholic cardiomyopathy, a condition where the heart muscles weaken and become unable to pump blood efficiently. This condition is often associated with long-term heavy drinking. For David, alcoholic cardiomyopathy means facing symptoms like fatigue, shortness of breath, and swelling in the legs and abdomen. The realization that his alcohol consumption has led to serious heart issues has been a difficult one for David to accept. He reflects on the years of drinking, acknowledging that what started as a social enjoyment gradually turned into a health hazard. There's often an overlooked link between long-term alcohol use and heart disease, although this knowledge is coming to the forefront as scientists continue to research alcohol's long-term effects. David's condition requires him to make significant lifestyle changes, including reducing his alcohol consumption and managing his heart disease with medication and lifestyle modifications. But to complicate things alongside his liver and heart issues, David's long-standing relationship with alcohol has also led to significant digestive problems. He often experiences discomfort, pain in the abdomen, and indigestion, symptoms characteristic of alcohol-induced gastritis. Gastritis, an inflammation of the stomach lining, is a common condition among chronic drinkers. Studies explain that alcohol can irritate and erode the stomach lining, leading to gastritis. For David, this means dealing with the uncomfortable and often painful consequences of his drinking habits. David's gastritis has also led to a decrease in his appetite and occasional bouts of nausea, further complicating his nutritional intake. Alcohol's effect on the stomach and intestines can disrupt normal digestion and the absorption of nutrients. Research shows how chronic alcohol use can interfere with the digestive system's ability to function effectively, leading to a range of gastrointestinal issues. For David, this translates to a daily struggle with eating and maintaining a balanced diet. Seems like all kinds of foods irritate his digestive system, and his bowel movements are rarely regular. Another concerning aspect for David is the increased risk of gastrointestinal bleeding. Chronic alcohol consumption can lead to the development of esophageal varices and stomach ulcers, which can bleed. This risk is underscored in research, showing that bleeding in the gastrointestinal tract is a serious complication of long-term alcohol abuse. For David, this presents a dangerous health risk that requires careful monitoring and medical attention. The long-term impact of alcohol on David's digestive system also has heightened his risk of developing pancreatitis, an inflammation of the pancreas. Turns out that alcohol abuse is a leading cause of chronic pancreatitis, a condition that can lead to severe abdominal pain and digestive problems. For David, the possibility of developing this condition is a source of concern and a strong motivator to change his drinking habits. David's experience with digestive issues has been a wake-up call about the effects of alcohol on the body beyond the more commonly discussed liver and heart conditions. Reflecting on the impact of alcohol on his digestive health, he understands the need for a comprehensive approach to recovery and management. This includes not only reducing alcohol consumption, but also adopting a healthier diet, staying hydrated, and getting regular medical checkups to monitor his condition. David's journey with the digestive issues and gastritis is a testament to the extensive effects of long-term alcohol consumption on the body. His story serves as a reminder of the importance of considering the full spectrum of health impacts associated with alcohol. But what if we look beyond the physical effects? In recent years, David has noticed a worrying change in his cognitive abilities. His memory isn't as sharp as it used to be, and he often struggles with concentration and decision-making. These symptoms point toward cognitive decline, a concern for many who have a history of long-term alcohol consumption. Research suggests a strong link between heavy chronic alcohol use and an increased risk of dementia. For David, this connection raises concerns about the long-term effects his drinking habits might have on his brain health. David's difficulty in remembering recent events and managing complex tasks reflects the findings of research indicating that prolonged exposure to high levels of alcohol can lead to structural and functional changes in the brain, affecting memory, executive function, and problem-solving skills. David recognizes these symptoms in his daily life, particularly in his struggle to stay focused and remember important details. Furthermore, David's long-term alcohol use has been linked to brain atrophy. Alcohol's neurotoxic effects can cause brain cells to shrink and die, leading to significant brain volume reduction over time. For David, understanding that his brain structure might physically be changing due to alcohol is pretty distressing. David already notices signs of cognitive decline, worrying about the potential of these issues worsening. In response to these concerns, David has started to seek medical advice and engage in activities known to support brain health, such as cognitive exercises and a healthier diet. He's also exploring support via groups for individuals reducing their alcohol intake. The Alcoholics Anonymous meetings seem to be helping him stay on track with its health goals and gain support in the process. David attends the meetings and reflects on his journey with alcohol. Soon, he realizes one profound impact on his mental health: his struggle with depression. Research has established a strong link between chronic alcohol use and the development and worsening of mental health issues, especially depression. For David, this connection explains the periods of low mood and lack of motivation he often experienced, especially during times of heavy drinking. David's experience aligns with findings that suggest alcohol can disrupt the balance of neurotransmitters in the brain, chemicals that regulate mood. As a depressant, alcohol can lead to feelings of sadness, lethargy, and hopelessness, exacerbating existing mental health issues and even triggering new ones. David recognizes these symptoms in his own life, understanding now how his drinking has likely played a role in his mental health struggles. He's not alone. Many of the attendees at his AA meetings can relate to the struggle. Yet another aspect of David's experience is the social isolation that often comes with chronic alcohol use. As his drinking became more frequent, he started to withdraw from social activities and lost interest in hobbies that once brought him joy. The social withdrawal is a common consequence of depression and has been linked to alcohol abuse in much scientific research. For David, the combination of alcohol's depressive effects and social isolation created a cycle that further impacted his mental well-being. David also notes how his alcohol use affected his sleep patterns. While he initially used alcohol to help him relax and fall asleep, Over time, it led to disrupted sleep and insomnia, contributing to feelings of depression. Research highlights the negative impact of alcohol on sleep quality, reinforcing David's realization of the link between his drinking and his deteriorating mental health. In his efforts to manage his depression, David sought help from a mental health professional who emphasized the importance of reducing alcohol consumption as part of his treatment plan. Studies show that reducing alcohol intake can significantly improve depressive symptoms and overall mental health. For David, the advice was a critical step in his journey toward recovery. Through therapy and support groups, David's begun to understand the complex relationship between alcohol and his mental health. He's learning new coping strategies and healthier habits that replace his reliance on alcohol. The process is pretty challenging, but ultimately essential for his recovery and long-term well-being. How else has alcohol wreaked havoc on David's life? Well, his long-term alcohol consumption has not only impacted his liver, heart, and mental health, but it's also increased his risk of developing certain types of cancer. Recent medical checkups have revealed that David is now facing a health scare related to alcohol-related cancer. In fact, research has shown a clear link between chronic alcohol use and an increased risk of cancers, particularly in the liver, esophagus, colon, and breast. For David, this information has been both shocking and eye-opening, as he had never considered cancer as a potential consequence of his drinking habits. One of the most significant risks for David is liver cancer, which can develop after years of chronic liver damage due to alcohol. The liver's role in filtering toxins means that sustained alcohol abuse can lead to mutations in the liver cells, eventually causing cancer. Research emphasizes the direct relationship between alcohol-induced liver cirrhosis and the development of liver cancer. David's diagnosis of liver cirrhosis automatically puts him at a heightened risk of this serious condition. In addition to liver cancer, David's also learned about the increased risk of esophageal cancer due to alcohol. Alcohol consumption, especially when combined with smoking, significantly increases the risk of developing cancer in the esophagus. Studies highlight how alcohol can cause damage to the esophageal lining, leading to cancerous changes over time. David, who occasionally smokes cigarettes while he drinks, now understands the compounded risks those habits pose. David's risk of colon cancer is another concern. Heavy and regular alcohol use is a known risk factor for colon cancer. The mechanisms are complex but involve alcohol's influence on the body's metabolism and its effect on the gut lining. David's years of heavy drinking have exposed him to this additional cancer risk. Furthermore, recent studies have also linked alcohol consumption with an increased risk of breast cancer. While this risk is more commonly associated with women, it has made David more aware of how alcohol can have a wide-ranging effect on different parts of the body, regardless of gender. David's understanding of these risks has helped him make significant changes in his lifestyle, including drastically reducing his alcohol intake. This decision has been difficult but necessary, as David realizes the importance of making health-conscious choices. In today's social culture, where drinking alcohol is often the norm, being mindful about alcohol intake is crucial. The stories of Jake and David illustrate the range of impacts that alcohol can have, from immediate effects to long-term health consequences. If you're interested in cutting back on your intake, here are some practical tips to help monitor and manage alcohol consumption. First, understand your limits. Respecting your personal limit is key to mindful drinking. This varies from person to person and is influenced by factors like body weight, age, and general health. Familiarize yourself with what constitutes a standard drink and try to gauge how much you can handle without feeling the adverse effects. Remember, it's not a competition. Listening to your body is key. A practical way to manage your intake is by keeping track of how many drinks you've had. There are numerous apps available that can help you log your drinks throughout the night. This not only helps you in staying within your limits, but also in understanding your drinking patterns over time. Next, alternate with non-alcoholic beverages, particularly water. This helps in staying hydrated, reducing the overall amount of alcohol consumed, and pacing your drinking throughout the evening. It's a technique that also minimizes the risk of hangovers. Even alternating each beverage with a non-alcoholic one can go a long way to reducing overall intake. Plus, with the rise of craft beverages, there are now more options than ever for low-alcohol or alcohol-free beers, wines, and spirits. These alternatives can be especially useful for social occasions where you want to participate without overindulging. Another good strategy is to set personal rules for your drinking habits. This could be limiting the number of drinks per occasion, choosing certain days as alcohol-free, or deciding not to drink when you're feeling down. Having clear guidelines can help you stay in control of your drinking. You might even wish to share these with a friend who can act as an accountability buddy. Social support is pretty critical in this type of journey, Surround yourself with friends who respect your choice to drink mindfully. Peer pressure can often lead to overdrinking, so having a supportive social circle is important. Don't be afraid to speak up about your decision to cut back on your alcohol. You might inspire others to do the same. And of course, regularly reflect on your relationship with alcohol. Are you drinking more than you'd like? Are there triggers that lead to excessive drinking? Being honest with yourself and being willing to make adjustments is crucial. If you find it challenging to cut back, don't hesitate to seek professional help. Many resources and support groups are available for those looking to change their drinking habits. By following these tips, you can enjoy the social aspects of drinking without compromising your health and well-being. Remember, being mindful of alcohol consumption is a personal journey, and what works for one person might not work for another. The key is to find a balance that suits your lifestyle and health goals. How will cannabis survive the apocalypse? Did William Shakespeare smoke a bowl before he wrote a play? Why do you get the munchies after toking? Which presidents liked to get dank on their downtime? And can you smoke so much weed that it kills you? These are 50 chronically insane facts about weed. Fact 50. Cannabis is believed to be one of the earliest plants to be cultivated by humans. Mentions of it have been found in writings from as far back as 3000 BC, and possible evidence of cannabis use has been identified in Neolithic archaeological sites that are over 10,000 years old. Most of the early evidence of cannabis use comes from Asia, with prehistoric cannabis residues and hemp fiber imprints having been found across China, Japan, India, and the Middle East. Historians believe that these ancient cultures used the plant not just for its psychoactive properties, but also to make rope, clothes, shoes, paper, and even as a food source. Fact 49. Have you ever wondered where the word marijuana actually comes from? Well, there are a couple of competing theories. According to one popular story, it comes from a Nahuatl word meaning prisoner. This explanation probably isn't true, though, as it was first popularized by anti-drug campaigner Harry J. Anslinger in the 1930s. The more likely explanation is that it comes from the Chinese mahrenhua, meaning hemp flower. Ganja, another popular nickname for the drug, comes from the Sanskrit word for the hemp plant. Fact 48. People have had it out for cannabis for over 700 years. Throughout history, marijuana has been mainly used for medicinal and spiritual purposes, but even so, it's always been a pretty controversial substance. In fact, the first known laws restricting marijuana use come from all the way back in the Middle Ages. The earliest known anti-cannabis legislation is believed to be a law passed in the 1300s by an Arabian emir called Sodun Sheikuni. Cannabis use was also made illegal by Napoleon Bonaparte during his reign and was widely outlawed throughout the British Empire during its heyday. Fact 47. The United States has something of a love-hate relationship with the hemp plant. America started restricting the sale of the drug in 1906, but only made it outright illegal in 1937 when the Marijuana Tax Act was passed. For some reason, hemp was outlawed alongside cannabis, but that wasn't the case for long. Once the U.S. entered World War II, the government started making propaganda that encouraged hemp cultivation. Since the hemp plant could be used to make cheap but durable rope and canvas, that was vital to the war effort. Hemp was then banned again in the 70s under the Controlled Substances Act, and the plant remained illegal until the Controlled Substances Act was revised in 2018. Even though the cultivation of hemp is still strictly regulated, in 2019 the U.S. managed to become the world's third biggest hemp producer after China and Canada. Fact 46. Urkel has his own bespoke line of weed. In 2021, actor Jaleel White launched his own brand of recreational weed called It's Purple, a variant of the Purple Urkel cannabis strain. Jaleel White, of course, was famous back in the 90s for playing the nerdy Steve Urkel on the sitcom Family Matters. When asked about It's Purple by Forbes, White said he started the business because he was tired of seeing his character's name and likeness used without his involvement, and figured he could get in on the action. He even filmed ads for it alongside Snoop Dogg, where he was fully in character as Steve Urkel. Fact 45. Reggae legend Bob Marley was buried with weed. Perhaps one of the most famous tokers of all time, music god Bob Marley took the plant to the grave with him. When he died of cancer in 1981, according to some accounts, he was buried with a football, his beloved Gibson Les Paul guitar, and a bud of chronic. Hopefully, he's still lighting it up in the great beyond. Fact 44. There are over 1,000 ways to say it. Literally. Time magazine has reported that there are over 1,200 popularly used slang terms for cannabis, and here are some of our favorites: weed, bud, ganja, chronic, grass, wacky tobacco, reefer, herb, green goddess, sweet Mary Jane, Donna Juanita, pot, dank, and the devil's lettuce. If we forgot one of your favorites, let us know in the comments. Fact 43. Tupac's closest friends smoked him. And no, that's not a euphemism. When Tupac was tragically murdered in 1996, his old band and close friends, the Outlaws, claimed to have gave him a true rapper send-off, rolling some of his cremains into a joint with some weed and smoking him up. While some have doubted these claims, the Outlaws themselves have stuck to their story. Personally, we think this one's up there with Marley's coffin weed. Fact 42. A group of weed-hunting teens invented 420. It's one of the most popular codes for cannabis, and it's the reason that April 20th, previously best known as the birthday of the decidedly unchill Adolf Hitler, is now synonymous with sharing some herbal love. In the early 1970s, a group of high schoolers from San Rafael High School in California went hunting for a legendary weed farm in their area, using the code 420 to signify the hunts. While they never found the El Dorado of ganja, their story and their secret code got picked up by the magazine High Times and the band Grateful Dead, leading to the phrase becoming forever cemented in cannabis culture language. Fact 41. Washington was the first U.S. state to legalize recreational marijuana use. And this is kinda poetic, given the state's namesake, America's first president, George Washington, famously cultivated hemp crops. He was a big fan of the plant, mentioning it over 90 times in his personal diaries. But there is no evidence that he ever used it to get high. Instead, he likely grew the plant due to its valuable resource for manufacturing those sturdy ropes we mentioned earlier for use in ship construction. The original United States flag, created by Betsy Ross, was even made out of the kind of hemp that Washington loved cultivating. It's as American as apple pie. Fact 40. A lot of celebrities smoke weed. Seriously, it'd be a whole video to list them all, but some of the most prominent, famous, avowed potheads include Jennifer Lawrence, Kirsten Dunst, Miley Cyrus, Zoe Kravitz, Lady Gaga, Brad Pitt, Jane Fonda, Harrison Ford, Charlize Theron, Pete Davidson, Morgan Freeman, Patrick Stewart, Rihanna, Snoop Dogg and Seth Rogen, duh, Willie Nelson, Woody Harrelson, Kendall Jenner, and Matthew McConaughey. And those are just the ones who admit it. Fact 39. Washington wasn't the only president with a history of weed use, and these presidents actually did smoke it. George W. Bush is an admitted weed user, and Barack Obama even had a weed-smoking club in his youth called the Choom Gang. According to some of the Choom Gang's other members, Obama actually pioneered some new weed consumption techniques, including TA, or total absorption, and roof hits. And yes, there is a cruel irony to the fact that both those presidents smoked weed, but neither of them legalized it on the federal level. We guess they just wanted to keep it all to themselves. Fact 38. The government could be making billions of dollars from marijuana. Extrapolating from the tax money that states with legal weed have already made, it's estimated that across the entire United States, the federal government could make $8.5 billion in tax revenue, and potentially more if they institute a so-called potency tax, where taxation of cannabis is put on a sliding scale based on how potent the strain is. And even this is nothing compared to the money that private industry stands to make. It's estimated that if weed was legalized in all 50 states, it would quickly become a bigger market than organic food. Fact 37. The U.S. military experimented with weaponized weed. Researchers at the Edgewood Arsenal facility in Maryland pioneered dimethylheptylpyrin. Try saying that 3 times fast. An extremely potent cannabinoid agent that had an elimination half-life of 20 to 39 hours. That's some serious sticky. In addition to the standard sedative and hallucinogenic effect, it also caused low blood pressure, dizziness, fainting, ataxia, and muscle weakness. So much so that someone under the effects of dimethylheptylpyrin had difficulty even standing upright. Obviously, the researchers at Edgewood didn't invent this just so U.S. soldiers could get high on government-subsidized ultra weed. They were exploring the possible use as a non-lethal crowd control agent, but that fell through because of the potential risks involved to the health of certain at-risk users and the political sensitivity of working with weed. Fact 36. For some people, marijuana use is a religious affair, and some countries even legally recognize this. In Italy, after a lengthy court battle back in 2008, it was deemed that people of the Rastafarian faith could keep weed for purely personal use as a religious sacrament, and in possession cases it would be up to the courts to decide, based on the quantity of the weed, whether it was for personal use or trafficking. Fact 35. Weed is giving coffee a run for its money. At least in Denver, in 2011, some counts showed weed dispensaries outnumbering Starbucks locations 300 to 266. Weed dispensaries were so rife that a popular local magazine even had a weed reviewer who gave their take on the local chronic. Fact 34. Weed is the world's favorite illicit drug. While debate rages on about how exactly weed is classified, one thing definitely isn't up for debate: the fact that people absolutely love it. According to some data, 219 million people, that's 4.3% of the global population between the ages of 16 and 64, used cannabis at least once in 2021. Fact 33. One of the first sales ever brokered on the internet was allegedly weed. In 1971, a Stanford student and an MIT student connected over the ARPANET, the precursor of the internet created by the precursor of DARPA. How did these two students of two of the country's most prestigious learning institutions use this connection forged over a revolutionary new technology? To get high, of course. They organized the sale of weed and in the process became accidental pioneers of illicit e-commerce. Fact 32. How much weed does it take to kill you? Well, we can only discuss this theoretically given that there are no recorded deaths related to cannabis overdose. Of course, it is possible to have a bad reaction, especially if you take too many edibles, which have a more potent high than smoking. But when it comes to drugs that are still illegal, cannabis is still one of the safest out there, compared to fentanyl, where as little as 2 milligrams can be fatal. Fact 31. Some people have proposed medical marijuana for dogs. However, while some pet owners have given anecdotal evidence of their sick pets having pain relieved by marijuana, most veterinary experts are skeptical. Dogs in particular are extremely vulnerable to marijuana toxicosis, especially when weed is consumed in a vector that dogs already shouldn't be eating, like brownies. So just to be safe, stick only to the treatments prescribed by professionals when treating your sick pets, or you could be putting their life on the line. Fact 30. Weed is in the air over Italy. And no, it isn't because Italy has a massive Rastafarian population who just love indulging in their newly legalized religious sacraments. We're not entirely sure why they did this, but Italy's Institute for Atmospheric Pollution Research decided to conduct a year-long study to monitor the effects of psychotropic substances in the air in 8 different Italian cities: Bologna, Florence, Milan, Naples, Palermo, Rome, Turin, and Verona. They ended up finding trace amounts of marijuana and cocaine in all 8 of them. Fact 29. A North Carolina hospital thought people were toking up around newborns. Social services started getting extremely concerned when urine tests from a number of newborns appeared to show trace amounts of marijuana in their systems, believed to be a result of secondhand smoke from overly mellow parents. However, when they dug deeper, they found out that the actual truth was even stranger. Chemicals in several different baby soaps, specifically Johnson & Johnson's head-to-toe baby wash, Johnson & Johnson bedtime bath, CVS nighttime baby bath, Aveeno soothing relief creamy wash, and Aveeno wash shampoo, seemed to trigger false positives for marijuana. If this wasn't discovered, it could have resulted in some life-ruining accusations getting thrown around. Fact 28. Illegal weed operations have been killing off owls. In another valuable argument for legalization, illegal pot operations have been having a ruinous effect on local ecosystems. In 2012, 2 rare spotted owls were found dead in Northern California's Mendocino County. The culprit? Rat poison, specifically rat poison used by a local illegal Kush operation to keep pests away from their crop. But it isn't just the owls. The fisher, a rare forest mammal native to the area, has also been put in a dangerous position by careless weed farmers. Rat poison has been found in the system of 85% of dead fishers found in the area, also believed to be caused by illegal weed operations. Fact 27. Is weed getting stronger? Researchers studied 36,800 samples of weed captured by the DEA over the last 20 years and found 2 interesting results. The amount of THC, the psychoactive compound in marijuana, has increased, and the amount of CBD, the chemical compound most often touted as having health benefits, has decreased. So when old stoners tell you that the weed was more chill back in their day, they're not just blowing smoke. Well, they probably still are, but just not about that. Fact 26. You can be allergic to weed. As if life for people with allergies wasn't hard enough, yes, you can also be allergic to Puff the Magic Dragon, both its pollen and its smoke. Allergic reactions can include runny noses, sneezing, irritation of the nasal passages, hives, and in one extremely rare case, anaphylaxis. For some people who experience allergic reactions to weed, it isn't actually the weed itself that gets them. Improperly stored weed can sometimes get moldy, and that mold sometimes has allergenic properties. Fact 25. Weed dependency is a genetic lottery. Like with all drugs, everyone has a different tolerance for weed, and the same goes for whether someone is likely to become dependent on it. Researchers have identified 3 different genetic markers as predictors for the likelihood of cannabis dependence. Fascinatingly, these same genetic markers are often also predictors for depression, showing that people who suffer from depression are sometimes more likely to use weed as an unhealthy coping mechanism. Fact 24. If you're an unlucky stoner, you might get cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. And that might sound horrifying, but, well, there is no but. It actually is horrifying. Chronic cannabis users who suffer from the syndrome will experience periods of severe nausea followed by cycles of profuse vomiting and abdominal pain over a 48-hour period. That doesn't sound like a fun time to us. Fact 23. Drug traffickers can get really creative with how they smuggle weed. Here's a highlight reel of some of the most deranged ways weed has been smuggled. 766 pounds of pot hidden in broccoli, 1,500 pounds hidden in coconuts, 4,000 pounds hidden in fake limes, $500,000 worth of it hidden in fake carrots, and even weed hidden in vats of strawberry jam. It's kind of weird how most of them are just fruits and vegetables. Let's see some creativity, guys. Fact 22. Debates have raged on for years on whether Shakespeare liked to partake in a bit of the devil's lettuce. During an excavation of the immortal bard's home, 2 pipes were found with, among other things, cannabis residue. Immediately this, plus Shakespeare's reference to a noted weed during one of his sonnets, had people claiming that one of history's greatest playwrights was an avowed stoner. This immediately led to scholarly debate after scholarly debate, with some on the side of weed, and the skeptics claiming that there's no proof that the pipes even belonged to Shakespeare. The debate has raged on for so long that Francis Thackeray, an anthropologist from South Africa, has requested the opportunity to exhume Shakespeare's grave and test his remains for any traces of cannabis. They might be taking this a little bit too seriously. Fact 21. Weed might change how you think about money. Studies have shown that cannabis reduces activity in the nucleus accumbens, a reward center of the brain involved in dopamine production. Those under the influence of cannabis are less likely to produce the kind of dopamine that motivates them toward external rewards, like money. That's why it can sometimes be difficult to get anything done while you're high. That and the fact that you're spending too much time thinking about old SpongeBob SquarePants episodes. Where does he get those pants? Fact 20. Why does weed give you the famous munchies? It's all down to the 3 magic letters THC. It stimulates the endocannabinoid receptors in the brain, which connect to regulation centers for everything from dopamine production to hunger. In most users, this triggers an appetite increase that has them reaching for the potato chips. While to most people this is just a little annoying, it can actually serve as a major medicinal effect for people undergoing a loss of appetite during chemotherapy. Medical marijuana can even get these in-treatment cancer patients eating again, which is a huge boon for their overall health and quality of life. Fact 19. The Rastafarians aren't the only religious group who use cannabis in holy ceremonies. And we do mean holy ceremonies, with an I. During the Festival of Colors, many Hindus enjoy a nice, refreshing cup of Tandai, which literally means cooling off. But for some, the Tandai is a little holier than others, because it's spiked with Bhang, an edible strain of cannabis found in India. Partakers have reported feeling a light, pleasant buzz upon consumption. The holy significance of the Bhang-triggered Tandai links to an old tale about Lord Shiva, but that's a little too much to get into in a video about fun weed facts. Fact 18. Cannabis can be used to treat epilepsy. As a life-threatening chronic condition that's believed to affect around 50 million people globally, doctors and scientists are always looking for new treatment options for sufferers. Thankfully, certain synthetic cannabinoids have shown promise in reducing the severity of seizures. The FDA-approved drug Epidiolex has been effective in treating 2 different extremely rare and dangerous forms of epilepsy: Lennox-Gastaut syndrome and Dravet syndrome. And as cannabis laws continue to relax, even more of the medicinal possibilities of cannabis are likely to be explored by researchers. Fact 17. In some cases, cannabis can actually help treat other addictions. The lighter side of the nucleus accumbens dulling comes with the fact that cannabis use can reduce cravings for other addictive substances if a person is trying to break their habit. This is true for more common addictions like alcohol, as well as some of the harder addictions. In more extreme cases, cannabis has even been an unexpected boon in helping people affected by the opioid epidemic. Fact 16. If you're at genetic risk of schizophrenia, you should keep off the grass. While this won't be the case with most users, multiple studies have shown that people genetically predisposed to psychotic disorders, like schizophrenia, may see their chances of developing symptoms worsen, especially if they use cannabis or are exposed to cannabis use earlier in life. In addition to lowering cognitive function with extended use, it increases the likelihood of hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia. Plenty of cannabis users report temporary paranoia during use, but when you're still experiencing it between sessions, then maybe it's time to lay off the leaf. Fact 15. One of the biggest steps back for America's marijuana legalization came with one of its most controversial presidents, Tricky Dick himself, Richard Nixon. As we know from the hours upon hours of rambling recordings he took of himself, Nixon's war on drugs was actually a war on disenfranchisement, intended to lock up and take the voting rights from hippies and black people who generally opposed his policy positions. And the racist legacy of Nixon's war on drugs still exists today. Black people are arrested at greater rates for weed possession than white people in America, even in states where marijuana is legal, all thanks to Tricky Dick. Fact 14. Why is an edible high so much different from a smoke high? It's practically a meme among weed lovers that while smoke hits you quicker, edibles wait for a bit and then hit you like a truck. They give a more powerful body high that can endure for hours and leave you in a living dream or a waking nightmare. So what's the difference? Why the delayed action and upped intensity? According to neuroscientist Nick Giacomas, the issue isn't that weed is metabolized differently, it's that it's going to get metabolized to different degrees in different parts of the body, depending on the route of administration. The real difference between edibles and smoking or vaping is that with edibles, a much larger fraction of delta-9 THC makes it to the liver first. There it gets converted to 11-hydroxy-THC. So in other words, if you smoke or vape, the ratio of 11-hydroxy-THC to delta-9 THC is quite low, and if you take an edible, it's much higher. Fact 13. Weed will survive the apocalypse. That's because cannabis seeds are just one of the many samples kept at Svalbard Global Seed Vault. They store over 21,500 cannabis seeds from 17 different countries, kept safe and sound in the event of an ecological collapse or a world-ending cataclysm. So don't worry if you're part of the post-apocalyptic tribe or a Mad Max-style raider gang in the wasteland, you can still enjoy a toke at the end of the day. Fact 12. The inventor of weed brownies was a plucky American activist, Mary Jane Rathbun, and no, that isn't why weed is called Mary Jane, it's just a funny coincidence, was also known as Brownie Mary, and was a pioneer for both cannabis legalization and the rights and protections of people suffering from AIDS at the height of the AIDS crisis. As part of her charity work for AIDS patients, she'd bake cannabis into brownies and give them out, and in the process, she noticed that it seemed to alleviate some of their suffering related to their illness. Her work is likely one of the many important foundations for cannabis research and activism to this day, and her work is still used despite her passing away from a heart attack in 1999. Fact 11. In Bhutan, the weed is as plentiful as it is illegal. It naturally grows there, especially in the Bhutanese countryside where it's so prolific that in some places it grows out of the cracks in pavements. It's illegal to cultivate it as a drug in Bhutan, but farmers often feed it to their pigs to fatten them up. Maybe humans will someday get that privilege when the pigs get high enough to actually fly. Fact 10. A dangerous weed rumor about North Korea often does the rounds. Reported by a number of 420-friendly publications like High Times and Mary Jane, it was an urban legend that despite all the other dystopian restrictions, the North Korean government is surprisingly chill about cannabis use, especially for tourists. While this is the kind of wacky North Korea fact that does numbers on the internet, it is something that might get you imprisoned or killed if you take it too seriously. While hemp is cultivated as an industrial production material in North Korea, cannabis is classified with the same drug restrictions as heroin and cocaine. And given the horrible fates undergone by tourists in North Korea for something as seemingly minor as stealing a political poster, you really should not take your chances breaking any of their laws. Or better yet, just don't go there. Fact 9. Who has the world's cheapest and most expensive cannabis? In a study conducted in 2018, it was found that Japan had the world's most expensive green, coming in at $32 per gram. If flying high in the land of the rising sun feels a little steep for your wallet, then you'd be better off vacationing in Quito, Ecuador, where the price of marijuana averages $1.34 per gram. Fact 8. Malaysia has some of the most brutal anti-drug laws in the world. Planting a single cannabis seed will put you in prison for the rest of your life. Being caught possessing 20 grams will get you lashed, 50 grams will get you 5 years in jail, and a fine equating to almost $5,000. Up until 2018, having 200 grams was considered trafficking, and you could get sentenced to death. But now, it'll only put you behind bars for the rest of your life. Yay? Fact 7. Carl's Jr. once served a weed burger for $4.20. Seriously, back in 2019, as part of a special promotion for $4.20, they released the Rocky Mountain High Cheeseburger Delight, which had a special Santa Fe sauce infused with a small quantity of CBD. It was only available for a single day at one of their locations in Colorado, but for any pot fans in the area, it was a day to remember. Fact 6. Ever been curious about the actual difference between a joint, a spliff, and a blunt, but been too afraid to look lame if you asked? The difference is actually pretty simple. Joints are small quantities of cannabis wrapped in rolling paper. Spliffs aren't pure cannabis. They're a mix of cannabis and tobacco in rolling paper. And blunts, if we can be blunt about it, are bigger loads of cannabis wrapped in cigar or blunt wraps, which normally also contain tobacco. Now, you're familiar with all the key weed smoking lingo. Fact 5. One man had the guts to smoke weed in the White House while weed was still illegal everywhere in the United States. It was none other than country music god Willie Nelson, who during the Carter administration snuck a joint into the White House and lit it up on the roof with the president's son, Chip Carter. It was thought to be a stoner urban legend for years until ex-President Jimmy Carter himself confirmed that the story was true. Rock on, Willie. Fact 4. Weed has been inspiring Hollywood movies for almost a century. Stoner comedy is a movie institution, with stoned adventures being seen in Pineapple Express, Dude, Where's My Car, and the Harold and Kumar trilogy. But the first ever movie inspired by weed was 1936's Reefer Madness. But this wasn't a comedy, at least not intentionally. It was a propaganda movie that implied smoking weed would turn you into a violent psychopathic killer and lead your life to ruin. Ironically, a lot of people get high to watch and laugh at it today. Fact 3. There are some negative side effects of smoking weed that you should look out for. While a lot of weed's impacts have historically been overblown as part of government scare campaigns, there are some scientifically proven negative effects. These include increased heart rate, which has been recorded as lasting for up to 3 hours after the user smoked. Breathing problems, since putting any kind of smoke into your lungs is going to irritate your airways. Chronic weed users also experience the classic smoker's cough and experience unpleasant phlegm buildup that leads to them coughing up gross gunk. And then there's the vomiting, nausea, paranoia, and sometimes even hallucinations that we mentioned earlier. And in the long run, chronic cannabis users might find themselves struggling with sleep issues, as well as difficulty self-motivating. This won't be true for all users, but there's always a non-zero chance. Fact 2. You can actually experience weed withdrawals when trying to come off the stuff. While experiencing the negative side effects of quitting weed is actually quite rare and is nothing like coming off of harder drugs like heroin, there are a constant set of symptoms for those who do suffer from weed withdrawals. So what can you expect from experiencing weed withdrawals? The most common symptoms include reduced appetite, the opposite of the famous munchies, mood swings, and a general sense of irritability, difficulty sleeping, including insomnia and strange dreams, headaches, an inability to focus, weed cravings, chills and cold sweats, digestive issues, and a general feeling of depression. That's why a lot of chronic users struggle to come off this stuff. And of course, Fact 1. The U.S. Coast Guard seized 54 tons of marijuana in a single bust back in 1977. The night train seizure occurred off the coast of Florida and was the beginning of Operation Stopgap, the first interagency initiative to stop drug trafficking. It was carried out by the Coast Guard, the DEA, and the federal marshals, and remains one of the biggest weed busts in history. Can smoking the devil's lettuce every day for a month be bad for you? What happens to your body exactly? Or more importantly, what happens to your mind? And what if you suddenly quit? Will you pay for your month of indulgence with nasty withdrawal? Humanity has come a long way where weed is concerned. It's now legal for recreational use in 25 states, plus 3 territories and Washington, D.C. A further 7 states in the U.S. have decriminalized it, meaning it's not legal, but you won't be prosecuted for taking it. This trend toward general acceptance seems to align with the general public's opinion. Surveys show that 88% of Americans think it should be legal for recreational and medical use. The world is changing. Seems like it won't be long until weed is legal or decriminalized in many more countries. That's because word's on the street that weed isn't half as bad as those Puritans from the past made it out to be. Even some of the strictest nations where drugs are concerned have done an about-turn on weed. We imagine a few of our viewers have been to Thailand in the last year and seen what has been nothing short of a weed explosion. And this is a country that not long ago could have you put behind some very nasty-looking bars for having a few grams of weed on your person. Entire streets these days in the tourist areas look like a fantasy dream of deceased Bob Marley. Weed shops are everywhere. Feels like walking through a weed wonderland. The BBC called it just that, interviewing a guy who said the country is now Amsterdam on steroids, but despite it being a veritable cash cow, there have been people, including doctors, calling for a re-ban. The government doesn't look like it'll change its stance. Surely, if this is happening in conservative Thailand, weed can't be that bad for you. That's what we'll try to figure out in this video. Let's start day one by exploring some myths about this once demonized drug. One theory states that weed can make you mad as in the angry type of mad, and maybe even on your first day of smoking, making it extremely relevant for our 30-day journey. There have already been news articles in Thailand saying someone viciously attacked someone else and the now legal weed was blamed. Some of those stories reminded people of long-gone era where misinformation about drugs came out of almost every politician's mouth. In the past, we humans absolutely got weed, aka ganja, pot, grass, herb, all wrong. You only need to look at anti-weed propaganda films like 1937's Reefer Madness, which told us that weed had its roots in hell, and if it doesn't turn you into a killer or compel you to sleep with the first person you see walking down the street, it'll render you in a state of hopeless insanity. Here's a line from a doctor in the movie explaining what happened to some kid who got himself addicted to weed. "Yes, I remember, just a young boy under the influence of the drug. He killed his entire family with an axe." This line is the definition of nonsense. You don't even need the numerous scientific studies to tell you weed doesn't usually make people violent. Unlike the very legal alcohol. As the American comedian Bill Hicks once joked, pot is a better drug than alcohol, I'll prove it to you. You're at a ball game or a concert and someone's really violent and aggressive and obnoxious. Are they drunk or are they smoking pot? That's hardly scientific, it's just an observation, but the people of the world would very likely agree the answer is without a doubt alcohol. With weed, there have been some studies that have suggested it could cause antisocial behavior. One such study published by the National Institutes of Health told us a meta-analysis found the risk of perpetrating violence was more than twice as high for young adults who used marijuana. Another piece of nonsense we like is when President Ronald Reagan during his war on drugs days said, "I now have absolute proof that smoking even one marijuana cigarette is equal in brain damage to being on Bikini Island during an H-bomb blast." He was speaking absolute balderdash, but that doesn't mean weed is completely safe where the well-being of your body or your mind is concerned. No drugs are 100% safe. Before we get into the effects of weed smoking after day one, there's something we need to tell you about weed in general. The fact that it just isn't for everyone. And we mean that some people might have a very bad reaction the first time they take it, especially if they do as many impressionable teenagers do, and get blasted before they've checked if they have a vehicle, aka a brain, suitable for space travel. You need to know that weed is a psychoactive drug. It affects your nervous system. It can alter how you think, what you see, and what you hear. It gets you high. How high is up to your tolerance, if you have a tolerance, and your unique body, and of course what kind of weed you've been smoking. It's well known that weed today is often about 10 times stronger than weed from half a century ago. Some people seem very sensitive to weed, and being high can almost be like tripping on psychedelics. Not always very pleasant, yet others might feel a sense of well-being, but not be all that out there. We all react differently. Start slow is our advice. There are 483 known compounds in weed, but the ones most talked about are tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, the one that's mainly responsible for the high, and cannabidiol, CBD, the one that's presently being sold as a possible antidote to anxiety and depression or a cure for pain and various diseases. We'll get back to that topic soon. Weed might not be for you at all, and we mean for some people, they're just too big of a risk. There is evidence that it can cause psychotic experiences, especially if you've had them before or they run in your family. It's rare, but be aware. There are plenty of scientific papers that tell us cannabis is a known risk factor for schizophrenia. Still, according to one such paper published by the National Institutes of Health, biological events and a valid model of neurobiological mechanisms are lacking. That means they weren't able to figure out what was going on in the brain when something went wrong. They couldn't find the actual cause. Nonetheless, it is well established that people on weed may become deluded, paranoid, If you smoke weed and you begin to think that all your friends are CIA agents who are trying to control your mind with a 21st century version of MK Ultra, you might be one of those people who should stay away from weed. We don't think the CIA does such things anymore. For some, the craziness is fleeting. They might find it after a particularly large dose that they tell their friends, "Look, my thumbs have gone weird. My heart is beating like a bleeped-up clock." That's from an old cult classic comedy movie with some really funny weed parts. It's a film, but the writer obviously had experience with the drug in question. Put your hand up if you've ever sneakily felt your heartbeat on weed because you imagine something ain't right. It can cause anxiety, and with some people, severe anxiety, leading to outlandish thoughts about something that's gone wrong with their body. Again, we know some of you are now nodding your head. Studies have shown long-term use of weed may increase the risk of heart issues, but it doesn't cause your heart to beat fast enough that it fails after just one smoke. That's the anxiety talking. Others say weed makes them feel disconnected from themselves, disassociative. They may hallucinate or just have some really disturbing, otherworldly thoughts. And we're not trying to scare you, but this stuff you ought to know. It's hard to understand how many people in a population will have a negative weed experience. In a Danish study consisting of thousands of people, the researchers said 30% of participants who'd had a psychotic experience in their lives would likely not have had one had they not ever ingested weed. Still, many people will not have such negative psychological reactions, especially when they take it in small amounts. Millions will consume it every day and they're A-OK. A World Drug Report in 2013 said 180 million people had tried weed in the last year. It's thought that there are about 219 million weed smokers on the planet right now. The CDC says about 11.5% of Americans smoke it or did so in 2021. In England and Wales, a study said 13.5% of 16 to 24-year-olds had it in the past year. 40% of those people said they'd used it at least once a month. Most of them would have been fine, but some of them would have had negative experiences. Another study we found said people who smoke weed are 3 times more likely to believe people will harm them than people who don't smoke weed. Then there was that study that tested people with an intravenous 1.5 milligram dose of either THC or a placebo, meaning nothing. The researchers found that the weed consumers were 30% more likely to have some amount of paranoia. Other negative experiences included lowered mood, worry, anxiety, and negative thoughts about themselves. So with all that in mind, you should start slowly with weed and see how it goes. Let's say you like it and you want to smoke it again. Day 1 of weed is over, it's now day 2. You may have noticed some forgetfulness, especially around the time you smoked the weed yesterday. Unlike those times you were wasted on alcohol, you haven't woken up in a strange bed with a penis scrawled on your cheek, but your memory is a bit fuzzy from around the time you smoked. There's a reason for that. Cannabis affects something called the hippocampus. It's a part of the brain that helps you process new memories. Studies on rats that were given regular doses of weed showed they struggled to remember how to do various tasks. There was even long-term impairment, but these rats were stoned throughout their entire young lives. You're not a rat, and you haven't been smoking weed for years on end, but this is something to bear in mind. Studies have shown that regular weed use in young people can affect how the hippocampus develops. But such cognitive impairment, like many things related to weed, needs to be studied more. Your month on weed almost certainly isn't going to change the structure of your brain in any significant way for the rest of your life. You may have had some short-term memory problems when you got stoned again today, but you don't need to sweat the long-term stuff yet. In fact, some studies have shown regular weed use may stave off neurodegenerative diseases that affect memory, like Alzheimer's and Huntington's chorea. Let's say you've now been hitting the weed for 5 days on the trot. Sure, you have some patchy memory days, but in general, since you're the kind of person who likes weed and has positive experiences with it, you actually feel fine. You haven't really experienced any changes. We mean the middle-aged, long-haired guy that's been selling it to you, the one who always is wearing that old Ween t-shirt, says he's been smoking it every day since 1997. He says he's fine. Well, he does seem to have some motivation issues. Many people do, which is why Afro Man wrote the song lyrics, "I was gonna clean my room until I got high. I was gonna get up and find the broom, but then I got high. My room is still messed up, and I know why." Again, that's not scientific, but many people have said such things. We'll come back to that topic of motivation soon. Another thing you noticed is you put on a few pounds. As the rapper Master P said in a song, "You the captain, I'm the crunch, you got that dinner, I got the lunch. Hit the weed, pass the blunt, your eyes red, and you got the munchies." A paper in the journal Nature, again based on stoned rodents, said the THC in weed can cause changes in the brain's hypothalamus, tricking the rat into thinking it's hungry. There's evidence that smoking weed can lead to an increase in the production of the hormone ghrelin, which can create hunger pangs. Not only that, but weed leads to increases in the feel-good chemical dopamine, so the experience of eating that food could feel much more satisfying than normal. If you're a weed smoker, we don't need to tell you this. You've all raided the fridge at 2 a.m. like a ravenous zombie after getting the weed munchies. Still, while you've put on a few pounds, studies have shown that regular weed use does not generally lead to weight gain in the long run. In fact, some studies show pot smokers might have a lower body mass index on average. We should just add here that there are so many studies out there and so many are contradictory that figuring out the mystery of weed is going to take a lot more work. You could literally spend all day Googling all the good stuff about weed and think it was the answer to all the world's problems. Then you could do the opposite and soon become scared out of your wits. It's always best to analyze various studies or at least know they exist. Let's also remember here that people wouldn't do it if it didn't make them feel good. As the book and the movie Trainspotting said about an illegal substance, not weed, but it works for all substances, people think it's all about misery and desperation and death and all that, which is not to be ignored, but what they forget is the pleasure of it. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. Sticking with the positives, for many people suffering from chronic pain, weed has been a godsend. You yourself may have had neuropathic pain in your back for years, but now you've been smoking weed for a few days and there's been a considerable reversal of pain levels. The reason for this is that a person's peripheral nerves, the nerves that detect pain sensations, contain a lot of receptors for cannabinoids. Scientists now think that cannabinoids might block peripheral nerve pain. Studies have shown this to be true in animals. Still, as you might know, the mind plays a big part when it comes to pain. You may have heard of the nocebo effect, where people feel pain when they shouldn't be feeling pain. A good example is the case of the guy who went to the ER with a long nail stuck through his work boot. He was screaming and telling doctors that even the opiates they were giving him weren't working. When they finally sawed off his boot, they saw the nail had actually gone through the gap between his toes. Embarrassed, the guy was suddenly pain-free. But for him, he really did feel that pain. And with cannabis, there's now good evidence that it can act as a placebo where pain is concerned. Studies have shown that when people with pain took a placebo that looked, smelled, and tasted like weed, they felt a reduction in their pain levels. We've known for decades that when someone takes a placebo for pain, certain neurotransmitters are released in the brain, including what are called endocannabinoids. But there have also been some negative reactions, especially now that you've been smoking it for 10 days. You seem to be less motivated. Studies have shown that after weed consumption, people can indeed be less motivated. One study showed that participants who've had weed were less likely to press buttons for a reward. Still, this study showed that if people waited 12 hours, their motivation returned. Now you've realized that taking a long break from weed smoking is sometimes good. Long-term smokers of weed don't need studies to tell them overdoing it can make them a bit sluggish and not exactly in the mood to get things done as fast as possible. It's the same with reaction times. You've noticed that when you're stoned, you might float like a butterfly, but not exactly sting like a bee. Researchers have said that this might have something to do with the brain's thalamus corticostriatal circuit. The Nature journal tells us that this controls movement execution, habit formation, and reward. Receptors in here bind with the THC, and this can slow down someone's perception of time. In a 2012 study, scientists said 70% of participants who smoked weed experienced what seemed like a stretching of time. Time moved more slowly, and this might have something to do with slowed reaction times. Studies have showed that performance can be affected. These are controversial studies given that people smoke weed and drive cars or operate planes or machinery. One study we found showed that when users had to perform a task after ingesting weed for 4 days, they not only had slower reaction times on the first day of the experiment, it seems that they got used to it. Another study, a meta-study, concluded that some lower-quality studies have reported next-day effects of THC on cognitive function and safety-sensitive tasks. However, most studies, including some higher quality, have found no such effect. But you've been taking it easy, so your reaction time's not much different from usual, certainly after 12 hours from your last smoke. You also seemed much more prone to slowness on the first few days that you did smoke. This seemed to be getting better the more days you smoked. Like most people in the world, the effects seem to completely go away between 2 and 4 hours. But another thing you realized is that after 12 days on this stuff, you started to get more anxious. This is because part of your brain called the amygdala is stimulated by weed. The studies on anxiety and cannabis use can be very contradictory. For some people, weed helped with their anxiety, but for others, they experienced an increase in anxiety after long-term use. although the causal links were not clear. In a 2017 survey consisting of 9,000 American regular weed smokers, 70% said it gave them noticeable health benefits, with almost 50% saying it relieved anxiety. Others said it helped with their PTSD. Some said it had a positive effect on their phobias, and some said it helped with sleep and social anxiety. But others said it caused anxiety, especially when they consumed weed with high levels of THC. It's a bit of an each-to-their-own situation. In your case, the anxiety has only been fleeting, and you only experienced it when you had consumed a lot more weed than usual. It's around this point in your 30-day experience that you notice the effect weed is having on your lungs. This is mostly a silent effect, although admittedly just the other day you coughed up something that made you think of the movie Ghostbusters. Just be aware that chronic weed smoking can increase phlegm production. You've been smoking for quite a while now, and this might have affected the cell linings of the large airways in your body, which has led to coughing up that ball of slime. Still, you don't mix the weed with tobacco as many people in the UK do when they often make those huge baseball bat spliffs in their Rizla-based works of art. The question is smoking weed safe just because you don't mix it with tobacco? A 2021 study showed that 44% of Americans believe that smoking weed every day is better for you than smoking cigarettes every day. Of course, the amount you smoke matters. People generally smoke way more cigarettes than weed joints. Still, smoke from weed is still not great for you. Scientists say it may still cause lung cancer and emphysema. The problem is scientists haven't figured out just how bad weed smoke is for you. Not enough studies have been done, something we've seen 1,000 times while researching the show. One of the studies was conducted at the Ottawa Hospital in Canada. Researchers compared 150 lung scans from weed smokers, tobacco-only smokers, and non-smokers. The research reported that rates of emphysema, meaning an inflammation of the airway, were higher in weed smokers than they were in tobacco smokers. Still, we're talking about 75% compared to 70%. Only 5% of non-smokers had it. As for the big C, the Mayo Clinic says cannabis may cause lung cancer, but there's not enough evidence right now to say it definitely does. Then again, there's also evidence that the compounds in cannabis have, in some instances, been shown to kill certain types of cancer cells, including those found in the breast, lung, prostate, and skin cancers. Again, we must reiterate that there have been some very positive results, but only with some people. So we definitely can't say cannabis, mainly CBD, will help someone beat cancer. One thing it seems to do for scores of people is help with their cancer pain, which is why more and more countries have given it the green light to be used in limited medical instances. On the other hand, you also have the genotoxic effects of oxidized hydrocarbons that occur when you burn cannabis, which has been said to create genetic changes that could potentially lead to a carcinogenic state. A paper published by the National Institutes of Health said weed joints deliver at least 4 times as much tar to the lungs as tobacco cigarettes of equivalent weight, explaining that it's because in these joints, there are usually not any filters and people tend to hold the weed smoke in longer. In short, when you compare weed smokers or cigarette smokers with non-smokers, the incidence of respiratory problems is much higher. One study showed it was 1 in 3 compared to 1 in 12, but we still can't say for sure if cannabis causes cancer. In one study, a big one, out of 65,000 people, it seemed marijuana use might have had a negative effect on prostate cancer, but not any other of the major cancers. The participants were aged 15 to 49 only, so more studies looking at older people would have to be done, since cancer is more common in older folks. We're not going to tell you that regularly smoking weed doesn't cause cancer, but we're also not going to tell you it definitely can. What we will say is your month on weed is certainly not the riskiest thing you'll ever do in your life, but you are inhaling smoke, and while it might not be as carcinogenic as some news articles might suggest, it is very possible that this experience is damaging your lungs. As things stand, you now have smoked weed daily for 3 weeks. We don't think there'll be any substantial damage. If you smoked joints every day for years, well, your lungs will suffer. Just how much? We can't say. It gets even more confusing when you read about vaping weed. Vaporizer devices activate cannabinoids, but they don't heat the goodness to the point of combustion. You might read this and think, well, that's great, vape it is then. But then you read vaping articles such as this one from Johns Hopkins Medicine. Emerging data suggests links to chronic lung disease and asthma, as well as associations between dual use of e-cigarettes and smoking with cardiovascular disease. But that same article also said we still don't have a definitive answer as to how bad vaping is for your body. We do know that when you do vape, You also inhale harmful chemicals, and some doctors in the US have said they've seen more and more people coming in to see them with conditions that could very well be related to their vaping habit. You all probably know former smokers who now vape, and they look like steam trains most of the day. Still, no one vapes weed in such high quantities. You've now been smoking weed daily for almost the full month. Will it be hard to quit? Is weed addictive? Yet again, this question is not easy to answer. Not all substance addictions and withdrawals are the same. If you have a physical addiction to alcohol or benzodiazepines like Valium, etc., coming right off after a long time can actually be very dangerous. You might not only have seizures that can and do kill, but in terms of mental well-being, you might think you've been plunged into anxiety hell, and we do mean hell. This is related to the effect these drugs have on your GABA receptors. In layman's terms, if a substance makes you very relaxed, your brain might stop creating chemicals that usually make you chilled, so when you stop, the very opposite of relaxed happens to you. It's the same for people who stop taking opiates and become incredibly restless and depressed. But what about weed? Does that kick the poop out of you when your body no longer has it? Actually, with cannabis withdrawal, you're definitely not going to experience anything like we just mentioned, but there is something called marijuana use disorder. People have been known to become dependent on weed. Their body craves the psychological changes that weed's been giving to them. They can develop a tolerance, so they need more and more. Still, it's said only 10 to 20% of daily weed users will develop dependence. There will be some mild withdrawal symptoms when they stop, maybe lasting about 2 weeks. These might include cravings, irritability, decreased appetite, mood and sleep difficulties, restlessness, and other kinds of physical discomfort. A paper in the National Institutes of Drug Abuse in the U.S. stated, in 2015, about 4 million people in the United States met the diagnostic criteria for a marijuana use disorder. 138,000 voluntarily sought treatment for their marijuana use. With any psychoactive substance, there's no clear line you can cross as to how long and how much you can actually consume before developing dependency. Everyone is different. There are cases of people smoking weed for years and having zero problem stopping, or maybe just mild issues. Then you have people who smoked for shorter periods who feel pretty bad after stopping. But on the whole, in terms of withdrawal symptoms, weed is far, far less dangerous than many substances we use to change the way we feel. Weed withdrawal is a gazillion times safer than if you were a regular consumer of things like Xanax, Percocet, or Johnny Walker. Still, you should be aware that becoming dependent on weed is possible. Studies show that this is a disproportionately bigger problem for younger people. Okay, so your month is up. And to be honest, since you've taken your weed sensibly, you feel fine. You are aware of all the psychological dangers some people face with weed consumption, but it seems that for now you're not one of those people who react badly to it. That said, if you keep this up, there's a very real possibility you'll damage your lungs, and there's also a real possibility you'll develop a dependence. Still, since you feel better, you're sleeping well, you have less social anxiety, and your work hasn't been negatively affected, you think you'll carry on. Although just to be safe, you're going to limit your smoking to small doses just a few times a week. Many people don't even know why they smoke weed. They might tell you, the reasons? There are no reasons. Who needs reasons when you've got weed? One person interviewed in The Guardian felt that way for 40+ years. She got to the point that she didn't even know if she enjoyed it anymore. She said in an interview, "I smoked to go to work, smoked to do the washing up, smoked for chill time." In the end, she said her lungs started to hurt and her gums regularly bled. She didn't know why she wanted it, but she craved it when she didn't have it. One day she realized she'd gone 2 days without weed and then just thought, okay, enough's enough. She craved it for sure, but with the help of meetings and counseling, she stopped completely. And guess what? She started dreaming again. That's something you noticed when you smoked for a month. You didn't dream. Many people don't regularly smoke weed because it interrupts the amount of time people spend in rapid eye movement or REM sleep, the time when most people dream. Dreaming was one of the big changes for her, but everyone is different where cannabis withdrawal is concerned. These are some comments made by people who quit after many years of daily smoking. I just quit after 10 years as well. Just cold turkeyed it, no withdrawal symptoms. The withdrawals have not been fun. I've lost 4 pounds in 2 days because it's really hard to eat. Mentally, I feel really clear and happy. My boyfriend stopped smoking weed like 2-3 months ago, and I'm noticing that his behavior is different. He's more angry and not as sweet as he used to be. And this one. I quit after about 6 years of smoking every day. It made me anxious and awkward in social situations. I would overanalyze things and think really weird or delusional thoughts. Forget about talking to girls, I couldn't handle it. Since I quit, all these things went away. As it said on the walls of the Temple of Apollo in ancient Greece, know thyself. With weed, you have to educate yourself and assess if it's good for your mental health while adding up the pros and cons as to how it'll affect your body and life in general. If you absolutely want to experience weed, we suggest wading in slowly rather than diving straight into the deep. It can be a mysterious ocean out there, and you never know what you might find. As we've told you many times today, scientists haven't yet plumbed the depths of all of Mary Jane, not entirely. Ever heard of a high so weird it leaves your breath smelling like you licked a toilet bowl? Or drugs so potent they skip the hangover and go straight to zombie apocalypse? Get ready. On today's episode of the Infographic Show, we're revealing the deadliest drugs you didn't know existed. Number 10. The first ever meme drug. Some of you might be old enough to remember the early days of the internet. It was a time when videos like shoes ruled, and most users had the good fortune of not knowing what a 4chan was. That all changed when a brand new drug called Jenkem entered the American consciousness, and 4chan would be largely to thank for that. Jenkem itself is considered by many to be more myth than fact, largely thanks to the 2007 spread of a hoax through American media culture. But we do have a report from 1995 by the Interpress service that references the drug being cultivated by street children in Lusaka, the capital of Zambia. According to the report, street kids would harvest human feces from sewer ponds using cans and bottles and then cover them up with a plastic bag. The contents would then ferment and release gases like methane. After a week, the kids would remove the plastic cover and huff the contents for a powerful but brief high. Technically not considered a drug, the use of Jenkem might be disgusting but perfectly legal. It would produce a longer-lasting high than sniffing glue or gasoline, two other popular ways of getting high for poor street kids. In 2007, a moral panic spread throughout the U.S. as parents worried that Jenkem had found its way to America, and it was now a popular drug of choice for teenagers all over the country. However, an investigation revealed that the entire controversy could be sourced back to a post by user nicknamed Pickwick on Totsie.com. It turns out Pickwick had faked creating a batch of Jenkem as nothing more than a joke. Even in 2007, like whoring was alive and well, and Pickwick's joke would spread like wildfire. Never once to miss an opportunity to create cultural chaos, 4chan users quickly picked up on the joke. They helped fuel it in an attempt to convince kids to actually try huffing poop for themselves. Jenkem might have never been as popular as claimed by reactionary media, but it appears to be a very real drug that at least some have turned to in desperation. Symptoms include crappy breath, literally, hallucinations, low blood pressure, and mood swings. If you or a loved one are huffing your own farts, please don't wait. Act now and seek help. Number 9. Bath salts. To be fair, you probably already knew about bath salts, but what you still don't know about bath salts is pretty shocking. In the early 2010s, America got a sneak peek into a fresh man-made hell with the widespread adoption of a brand new lab-made and perfectly legal drug nicknamed bath salts. A man in Florida ate somebody's face while allegedly high on bath salts. And while that's a regular Tuesday for Florida, it was shocking news across the rest of the country. More incidents began to pop up, and soon the entire world was asking, what in the world were Americans snorting that was turning them into real-life flesh-eating zombies? Packaged innocuously as bath salts and labeled not for human consumption, these synthetic drugs exploited a legal loophole to flood the market unchecked. And where were they coming from? China. Labs there mass-produced these substances, shipping them en masse primarily to the U.S. Marked as synthetic marijuana, bath salts could produce a very short-lived but intense high, similar to a powerful stimulant such as cocaine, while playing hungry hippos with the rest of your brain chemistry. With artificial derivatives of powerful psychedelics, bath salts were a witch's brew of bad alchemy that would send you on a rage zombie trip into the stratosphere with a better than zero chance of eating a neighbor's face. Chinese labs have infamously been the primary suppliers of precursor chemicals for other drugs that flood American markets, such as fentanyl. The situation has gotten so bad that the U.S. has exerted significant diplomatic pressure on China to cease and better control exports of precursors, with Chinese authorities taking largely ceremonial measures to do so. Bath salts evaded regulation for years, and they were sold everywhere from truck stops to 7-Elevens, where they were billed as performance enhancers, energy boosters, and anything in between. While bath salts have turned out to not be behind the infamous Miami cannibal case, users high on them have engaged in acts of ultra-violence against strangers and even family members. In one case, police shot a man high on bath salts, failing to stop his aggressive charge even after emptying a full clip into him. A teenager from Kingsport cut her leg open in order to dig out imaginary worms. Another man in Kingsport drowned while high on bath salts. Not a particularly shocking outcome until you learn he was only in knee-deep water. Synthetic drugs like bath salts are now illegal, but that hasn't stopped China from exporting thousands of tons of precursor chemicals to drug cartels in order to aid them in flooding American markets with deadly drugs. Number 8. The tourist trap drug. It's a warning you'll see posted on many digital nomad forums. If you're traveling across South and Latin America, be wary of being drugged, and not without good cause, as drug-related robberies of foreigners have exploded across the region with the rise of the digital nomad lifestyle. In particular, a lot of media attention has focused on Medellin, Colombia, with frightful stories of a brand new drug being used to turn people into walking zombies. It's known as burundanga, or devil's breath, pharmaceutical name scopolamine. The drug has a variety of health benefits, and it's regularly used to treat severe vertigo or nausea. But it's the street use of the drug that's terrifying. Tourists visiting South American cities have reported horrifying encounters being drugged and put into a zombie-like compliant state. Victims don't just fail to fight off their attackers, they actively cooperate, handing over everything from their wallets to personal passwords and even access to their bank accounts. In 2010, the Colombian State Department issued warnings due to the rise of sedatives to target and attack tourists. Criminals have turned to scopolamine because it is odorless and tasteless, making it easy to put into someone's drink. It's the amnesiac effect of scopolamine that makes it terrifying, though. Victims could take hours or even days to recover, only to be left with no memory of what just happened to them. Though media focuses on tourists, the truth is that in Colombia alone, 50,000 people a year are targeted, primarily native Colombians. Dating apps are a popular trap for both tourists and natives, with tourists explicitly warned about meeting women on dating apps. Everything from food and drinks to even cigarettes are spiked with scopolamine. Once inhaled, the drug goes to work from inside the lungs. The drug is also powerful enough to work simply by administering topically. An attacker could walk by and spread a strange substance onto your exposed skin, administering a powerful dose of the zombie drug. But let's just cut through the hype. Is the drug really as bad as reported, or is this another Jenkem-style case of overly alarmist media? Chemical submission is the process by which various drugs and chemicals are used for the purpose of overpowering a person. This includes everything from common techniques such as plying a victim with alcohol to new and exotic synthetic paralyzing or anesthetic agents, like scopolamine. It's a very real phenomenon around the world, though some nations have a history of wider use than others. Browsing through medical literature, though, scopolamine seems to be a minority case for instances of CS, and the media may be overhyping the actual results. We couldn't find a single verified case of people being turned into fully compliant zombies, for instance, though in one case a victim appears to have handed over banking details to his attackers before succumbing to the drug. However, because the dose used in this case was lethal, it's unknown if the attackers already had access to the victim's financial details or perhaps found them somewhere like in the victim's home or a computer. So, can you be drugged and turned into a willing zombie with scopolamine? To an extent, yes. Scopolamine attacks are very real, and there is very little you can do to protect yourself, given how easy it is to expose a person. The best thing you can do is avoid known trouble areas and travel with trusted groups of people. This next drug comes with some pretty disturbing images, but even they are nothing compared to what's waiting for you in the number 1 spot. Number 7. The real zombie drug. Xylazine, or tranq, is a modern epidemic that's turning people into real-life walking dead. Combined with its euphoric, calming effect, tranq got its nickname as the zombie drug, both from how it left its users looking and from their slowed reactions and dulled intelligence. It reminded many of old-school Hollywood zombies. Originally developed to be used as a sedative, a pain reliever, and a muscle relaxer for animals, tranq is approved for use in animals but not humans. However, since the early 2010s, drug manufacturers have been mixing tranq in with other drugs in order to make administration easier and give the users a more powerful high. Fentanyl is frequently mixed with tranq simply because a dose of fentanyl is usually no bigger than the head of a pin. In fact, anything more than that is likely to kill you. However, such a tiny dose is logistically impossible to administer, so instead, the fentanyl is mixed with larger doses of tranq, which has the side effect of boosting the high from the opioids. So how is tranq turning people into walking dead? As a powerful sedative, and we do mean powerful, tranq can leave people in a euphoric stupor, This prompts many habitual users of tranq to develop bed sores, similar to hospital patients that aren't regularly rotated or exercised. These sores, however, will often go untreated and can grow in size until they cover large areas of the skin. Entire chunks of flesh can effectively rot and fall off the body. Addicted habitual users will often show little concern as long as they can keep getting high. Infection at the injection site is also a common origin for some of the more horrific effects of tranq. How these wounds progress as horrifically as they do is currently a mystery, though researchers believe that there's a combination of effects at play. Poor nutrition in drug-addicted individuals can hamper both the body's ability to repair itself and to fight off infection. The infection itself can result in itchy scabs that the user picks at. Slowly but surely, the wound grows and spreads until it leaves a large part of the body looking like a reanimated corpse. It's also believed, however, that tranq's effect on blood vessels has a lot to do with the spread of these wounds. Tranq can constrict blood vessels and elevate blood pressure. It eventually makes it difficult for the blood to circulate properly and pass through and into tissues. This effect, compounded by others mentioned before, could lead to necrosis and destruction of the flesh and skin. What drug will improve sex but give you cancer in the process? That's coming up, but first, number 6. Bath salts, the sequel. Synthetic drugs, once sold under the label bath salts at gas stations nationwide, may now be outlawed, but synthetic drugs themselves have exploded in popularity. Thanks to advanced technology and accessible education, the wonders of chemistry are becoming easier to master. This means street dealers worldwide are turning to cheaply made synthetics to flood the market with potent new intoxicants. Flocka, the most popular of synthetic cathinones, has exploded in popularity in 2014 and 2015. A cousin to the various witch's brew of synthetic drugs once sold legally over the counter, Flocka has more than lived up to the reputation bath salts once had, and exceeded it. In Fort Lauderdale, a man high on Flocka approached police at a police station, claiming he needed to go to jail. Clearly misunderstanding how the whole prison system thing works, the man decided his best move was a dramatic escape. He bolted from the cops, scaling the police station's metal fence. He ended up impaling himself at the top, remaining painfully stuck until rescued by the fire department. Another Florida man, no surprise there, high on Flocka ran his car into a jail trying to break inside in order to visit his friends. Long-term use, though, can lead to permanent psychological harm and lifelong delusions or mental disorders. And you can get it for cheap, as little as $5 a dose in some places. We just scratched the surface of these terrifying substances, and there's a whole lot more to come. But which of these drugs has shocked you the most so far? Let us know in the comments. Number 5. The sleepy time drug. Gamma-hydroxybutyrate, better known as GHB, is a powerful substance that's growing in popularity and showing up everywhere from bars to clubs to the highest levels of power in various industries. And the goal is the same: render you unable to resist someone physically. The drug is nearly tasteless, although alleged to be slightly salty. However, when mixed into a liquid, it dissolves completely, making it invisible. But it's the ability to mix GHB into a variety of delivery methods that makes this drug so terrifying. It can be administered in pill form, dissolved into a drink, or sprinkled onto food. It can even be absorbed internally through agents like lubricant. GHB, however, can also be used to fight depression and even stimulate muscle growth, which has made it a popular drug of choice for amateur chemists, along with the fact that it is fairly easy to produce the precursor agents for GHB. This only ups the risk, though, as both these homemade brews and those bought from equally amateurish drug dealers can be dangerously impure or have inaccurate doses. Every time you take a dose of GHB to fight off the gloomies or build muscle mass, you are rolling the dice with your physical and mental health. GHB abuse is believed to cause long-term psychological harm and bad trips that can end in tragedy. This next drug will put you through hell, but the drug in the number 1 spot will make you physically look like you belong there. Number 4. Seventh Heaven. Those of you who enjoy raves probably recognize the nickname of this next drug. Exploding onto the scene in the 90s, a variety of party drugs became increasingly popular in clubs across the world. One of the newest variants, 2CB, is quickly becoming a scourge, though, due to a whole rash of unwanted side effects and a propensity for very bad trips. 2CB is a psychedelic drug capable of impacting all 5 senses, making it a popular choice for those looking for a strong trip capable of lasting several hours per dose. The drug can alter mood, perception, and even sensations of time slowing down to a near crawl or speeding up to a blur. Users often report feeling like they've stepped outside of time itself. Some even state that the drug allows them to slow time down so as to more fully absorb details in the world or in a conversation they might have otherwise missed. Part of the appeal of 2CB is the powerful visual and auditory hallucinations that it can manifest, affecting each individual differently. On the positive side, users report vivid experiences like explosions of color synchronized with the music, resembling an artificial form of synesthesia, to encounters with loved ones who have passed away. However, on the negative side, 2CB can create nightmarish distortions of reality, and because it affects all 5 senses, individuals can not only see these hallucinations, but often feel, smell, and even taste them. The uncontrollable nature of 2CB's hallucinations are what makes it dangerous. In certain individuals already prone to mental illness or suffering from them, these hallucinations can trigger a catastrophic worsening of their condition. The fact that the drug is often combined with other drugs specifically to enhance its psychedelic effects only makes it more dangerous. If you've learned anything by now from this video, it is that bad alchemy can be deadly, and mixing and matching drugs is definitely bad alchemy. The 2 most commonly mixed drugs include cannabis and opioids, such as tramadol. When mixed with weed, 2CB creates a much more potent hallucinogenic experience, but it's commonly known to increase the chances of a bad trip. Mixing 2CB with opioids for their euphoric effects comes with a hidden danger. It can significantly lower the body's threshold for seizures, posing a serious risk, especially to individuals unaware that they are already prone to such conditions. 2CB is commonly taken in powder form, though it is available in pill form. Snorting 2CB can be extremely painful due to the crystalline structure of the powder, in effect sandblasting the delicate tissues inside of your nose. Like cocaine, prolonged abuse of 2CB by snorting can actually cause substantial damage to your nose. Want more crazy drug trip videos? This drug delivers them in spades. Number 3. The drug that'll have you fighting sandworms. We've already chatted about synthetic cannabis and the explosion of synthetic drugs on the market starting in the late 2000s. One of these variants of synthetic cannabis, however, has garnered a reputation for driving people completely out of control. The opposite of what millions of people hoping for a mellow marijuana-like high were hoping for. We're not on planet Arrakis, and no, you're not Timothy Chamomile or whatever his name is, but you too can experience the joys of spice. A synthetic attempt at recreating the high of cannabis, spice has become a catch-all term for various types of fake weed, and they're all terrible and horribly dangerous. THC is only a partial agonist, meaning it only partially reacts with the cannabinoid receptors in the brain. But synthetic cannabis is oftentimes a full agonist, meaning it will completely saturate and activate all of the body's cannabinoid receptors, even in low doses. This is why spice will wreak havoc on your brain, while THC's effects are much more mellow. Research is still lacking into the effects of spice and other synthetic drugs, but it is believed that long-term use can either cause development of mental illness or seriously aggravate it. Psychotic episodes in long-term users have been documented, often lasting long after an individual has stopped smoking spice. Physical health effects can also be severe, and the manufacturing process itself is often to blame. In 2018, hundreds in Illinois were rushed to the emergency rooms across the state after smoking synthetic cannabis laced with rat poison. The poison had entered their lungs, causing them to cough up blood, suffering from bleeding gums, severe bloody noses, bleeding internally, and even causing them to urinate blood. 3 people died after smoking the bad batch, which was traced back to 3 convenience store clerks who had been serving up some under-the-counter goods. We're almost at the number 1 spot, and we're warning you, you better have a strong stomach if you're gonna stick it out. But first, number 2, poppers. You won't believe how many drugs people use every day to get high and are not just legal but sold over the counter at stores all over the nation. Nitrites, or poppers as they're known if you're not a fudging nerd, are one of those perfectly legal drugs abused by millions. Well, technically they're not legal if sold for the purpose of getting high, which is why manufacturers get around legal restrictions with the lowest amount of criminal effort possible. But first, what in the world are we talking about? Poppers belong to the alkyl nitrate family, and they can release powerful fumes when their containers are open or popped. The nickname comes from the distinctive popping sound made when the glass capsules they originally came in were crushed open. While they're now sold in small plastic bottles, the name has stuck. As far as drugs go, poppers are not very powerful. Usually they create a feeling of mild euphoria, bodily warmth, and accompanying dizziness that only lasts a few hours at most. It's this quality along with their chemical makeup, though, that makes them so dangerous. Because they typically have such a short high, sometimes measured in minutes, users tend to do many in rapid succession, with toxic effects. When used prior to sex, poppers help relax the body, and the mild euphoria they produce can heighten the feelings of pleasure. This has led to a culture of party and play, where users will imbibe in a variety of chemicals prior to engaging in sexual intercourse. Most poppers will have a high that lasts around 2 to 5 minutes, which helps add to the danger of overuse. Direct contact with the skin by some poppers can actually cause chemical burns and severe inflammation, especially around the nose and mouth. Swallowing rather than inhaling a popper can also lead to a dangerous drop in oxygen in the blood, causing extremities to turn blue from a lack of oxygenation. They can also cause unconsciousness and have been known to put people into comas and even kill. Poppers have been documented to cause temporary changes in eyesight from routine users. They've also been linked to a direct increase in sexually transmitted diseases, likely because users who are high are less prone to making decisions to have safe sex. Some poppers have also been shown to be carcinogens, increasing the risk of cancer in habitual users. So, how is it that poppers remain perfectly legal for sale? That would be because in order to skirt around drug laws, poppers are not advertised for human use. Rather, companies that produce them will label them things such as room deodorizer, leather polish, nail polish remover, or even cleaning solutions for various electronics. With names like Buzz, Heavy Duty Bolt, Bang, and Purple Haze, though, it's no secret what their intended use is. Number 1. Crocodile. Crocodile is a designer drug with origins in Russia and Eastern Europe. A synthetic opioid, it's easily manufactured at home with codeine, which up until 2012 was available over the counter in any Russian pharmacy. Russian chemists discovered they could boil codeine tablets alongside a diluting agent such as paint thinner, gasoline, and hydrochloric acid to produce desomorphine. Desomorphine is 8 to 10 times stronger than morphine and much faster acting, though it lasts shorter than morphine, which really spikes up its addiction potential. Like any homemade drug, Crocodile suffers from an incredible degree of contamination due to the manufacturing process. Crocodile is so powerfully addictive that even if one customer dies, there's always more to take their place. But Crocodile is so deadly that on average, an addict will only live for 2 years. The drug's curious name came about due to the effects the drug has on the human body. Crocodile results in necrosis of the skin. After injecting the drug, the injection site will become swollen and painful, with the skin soon after becoming discolored. Ulcers will form as the tissue around the injection site begins to die and slough off. It's believed that it's not the drug itself that's causing these effects, but rather the myriad toxic chemicals used in its production and present in the dose being injected. Paint thinner and gasoline can be extremely harmful to skin, and even more destructive when injected directly into the body. The inevitable hardening of the flesh and black discoloration is what earned Crocodile its name, due to the resemblance to the scaly hide of a crocodile. Damage will progress down past the skin and into the muscles and the cartilage underneath. This will cause muscles around the injection site to also die off, eventually simply shedding off of a user and exposing the bone underneath. The limb may retain some function depending on the muscles affected, but because users must find new areas to inject themselves, the damage tends to grow outward from the first injection site, slowly consuming entire swaths of the body. Crocodile can also cause bone death and infection of the bones themselves, even far away from the injection site. Bacteria can enter the body through deep wounds and penetrate into the bone itself, and thanks to damage to blood vessels that Crocodile creates, reduced blood flow can also lead to a loss of oxygenation to the bone. Amputation is inevitable as the entire limb becomes useless. Gangrene and other serious infections will inevitably set in, leading to death if not treated. But organ failure is the most common cause of death for Crocodile users, and addicts who don't get treatment will on average die within 2 years. One of the most horrifying and destructive drugs in the world, Crocodile is always under threat of wiping out its own customer base, prompting dealers to push it hard in order to snare in new addicts to keep the cash flowing. Did any of these drugs surprise you, or do you know of others? Share your thoughts in the comments. Now go check out real reason fentanyl is so deadly, or click this other video instead.